This podcast features a lot of adult language.
Is ready? Let's give him a little, give him a little, big Trouble in Little China.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
I feel kind of invincible.
Yeah. This is Podmaster Mike in the Orc-Chop Express, and I'm talking to whoever's listening out there. I have 3 amazing DMs in the room with me tonight, and we have another excellent DM joining us through Skype today. So I'm going to go around the table, and I'm going to introduce our DMs tonight. We have, to my left here, Mr. James Houlihan.
Hey, how's it going?
You can find him on Twitter at Chainmail Ninja. And to my right, we have Mr. Brett Rude.
You can find me. Oh, hey.
Are you on Twitter now?
Yeah, I'm officially on Twitter, and I have
tweeted.
That's what it's called. It's called tweeting.
It's like sending out ravens.
Yeah, pretty
Yes,
much.
pretty much.
Only I have a very small rookery.
It's one raven.
I just have one precious.
And
raven.
what did you make the username?
Ovalt the Great.
At
Ovalt.
Great. You'll get it. You'll get it. It's fine. And then, furthermore, to my right, we have Mr. John King.
Hello.
You can find him on Twitter as well at Prester John Rex. And then for our guest DM tonight, we have the magnificent Matt Colville. How are you today, sir?
Yay.
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me
Excellent.
on, guys.
Yeah, definitely. We're really excited you're able to join us. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
Happy to
he's
do
like,
it. I'm excited too.
like Hansel. He's so hot
Yeah.
right now.
Well, let's jump right into what we're excited about this week. John, what do you got going on?
Well, you know our name's Orc-Chop Express.
That's true.
It's a play on things, of course. Mm-hmm. And excited because Big Trouble in Little China Alive is happening this Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
I
see Matt Colville's interested.
What is that?
It is a show that's going to be playing at a theater in Chinatown here in San Francisco.
Appropriate.
The
At
Golden Star, right?
I think Great Star.
The Great
it's
Star,
either
right?
Great Star or Golden Star. I should know the name of the theater before I go there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it's going to be crazy. They're going to have it playing on the screen, reserve seating, live like martial artists and music and all this stuff happening. Explosions.
That's what got me signed up. Was
So it sounds like you're doing like a Rocky Horror Picture Show type of thing.
Kind
Yeah,
of,
sure.
yeah. It's the same
awesome.
thing. I'll be bringing my lovely custom-made 6 demon bag.
Nice.
Yeah. So,
Very good.
so I'm really excited about that. Thursday cannot come enough. Like soon enough, definitely. Not come enough yet.
That's an important word.
Well, yeah, I need to
The
put
soon part
stuff
was
in
important.
sentences. Yeah,
That's true. That's true.
fair enough.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, that's what I'm excited about. Can't wait.
Nice.
Cool.
What do you got going on, Brett?
I have been working on some crafty projects.
Doesn't sound like you at all.
Oh no, not at all. So now that we have glorious video, so we've been collecting these books that look like boxes. Anyway, I just repainted this book because this is going to be my character's uncle's book of illusions and mind trickery, which is cool because I can store stuff in there, and that's all neat and
It's a
dandy.
great prop. It's a great prop.
So that's fun. But what I'm really excited about,
That's his cheesy prop compared to his next
that's
one.
a cheesy one. I have started hand making a spell book.
Oh my
Character's
God,
name
really?
on it. Hold on. Make sure there's not too much glare. You can see Ovalt Mithril Tongue, and I haven't finished. It's looking too fancy. I need to rough this up.
Sure.
So this is kind of
Just
okay.
stress it. You have to weather it.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Weathering is something I'm quite adept at. I just haven't gotten to it, so I'm a little embarrassed that this is looking so.
Yeah, you
brand new.
should be.
Oh, this
Yeah,
is
Right.
I don't know why you're showing it right now.
But now, when I open it up, I
Oh,
have
it's crunchy.
these
Ooh.
pages that I kind of hand tore, and I hand bound this. You can't really, I suppose you can't really see in the video, but I stitched this together myself.
What are some of these things on your vicious mockery page?
So
I see dog fart.
Ovalt has vicious mockery, and I've written all sorts of insults and mockeries on
That's
here.
great.
Is that a middle finger?
Yeah, drawings of different offensive hand gestures.
In case
This
you
one-
just don't know.
So the middle finger insults men and dwarves. The 2 fingers insults elves, halflings, and tieflings. 3 insults dragonborn and gnomes.
Pinky
And
out.
then the pinky out insults orcs.
Oh,
And
okay.
there's a little meaning. This represents your penis size, and orcs are quick to be enraged by that. But I have all kinds of different things like ogre fondler and hog humper, dinkish blister. Other more elaborate ones like "Are you fighting or playing with your skin flint?"
Oh my god.
Shrill harpy, all kinds of fun.
Matt's like, what did I get myself into?
Yeah,
I apologize,
welcome.
man.
I think more players with Vicious Mockery, I think that's a great example. I think more players should like write down, their ideas and just keep a running tab of stuff that would be fun to bust out when they cast the spell.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, it's
I
kind of-
try to play it up.
It's kind of Ovalt's thing. In our first session ever, coming back to D&D, he killed 2 goblins with vicious mockery, getting the killing blows. So that was a challenge.
That is
to
definitely
DM.
vicious.
I put a wine stain on here, but I used his giant beer stein, so it looks like because this is a gnomish-sized book. This isn't human-sized, so I wanted to make it look huge. Anyway, I'm putting a lot of detail into this. This will all be weathered up, but I'm very excited for Ovalt's spellbook.
That's
Awesome.
I love it.
That's great.
How about you, James? What do you got going on?
I'll try and be brief, but one thing that it's one of my many irons in the fire that I haven't been able to talk about forever, and now I can talk about it, so I'm super excited. And one of the things that we have been hesitant to do as a podcast is put out like a Patreon and stuff, just because we didn't really feel comfortable just asking for money. And one of the things I love about Matt's channel specifically is that you have your books, and rather than just asking for money, you'd rather give something back for those, for the support. And so we've been wanting to make T-shirts for ourselves, just because we love our logo, because it's based on Big
pretty
Trouble in
much in
Little
love
China.
with ourselves.
Yeah, we think we're pretty rad.
It's just our faces.
So,
It's not. I'm kidding.
I went ahead and set up some T-shirts for sale. So if any listeners want to support us, they can go ahead and pick up a shirt. Then they get a pretty sweet shirt. And even if they're not fans of the podcast, if you have friends that are into fantasy and Big Trouble in Little China, they might enjoy the mashup idea. So
It's a great logo. I think I think there are lots of people that would like to get that shirt. Even all they have to do is be a nerd, and they like that shirt.
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
That's what we feel.
On the one hand, I'm like, man, I wonder if a lot of our Facebook page likes are just people who saw the logo and they're like, haha, that's cool, and like it.
You know
And
what? You gotta start somewhere.
yeah, so
Whatever hooks them.
yeah, so that's what I'm excited about. And by the time this goes live, those should be available. We'll post the link, and for the first 3 days, they'll be on sale price. So that's just the place that's making them. That's their deal. So
Cool.
yeah.
What site is it?
That's a great idea.
It is tpublic.com, but
Okay, cool.
we'll have a direct link.
Hoodies?
straight to-
Are they gonna be hoodies?
Yeah, they actually have a pretty good range of products. I'm sorry if we get a lot of requests for tank tops, we can re-enable them, but I shut that off. And then there are hoodies, there's baseball tees, there's all sorts of stuff, and
Cell phone cases.
Kind of need to have a
There are
tank
cell
top
phone
for the whole
cases.
Big Trouble in China, Jack Burton.
That's true. Yeah. Okay, so maybe I'll re-enable.
I don't really support tank tops, but
just on principle.
Well,
Yeah.
tank tops don't support me. So.
Yeah. Well, but yeah. So, and as we get more, art designs and stuff, we might add prints and other T-shirts. But for now, it's just the one. So yeah.
okay. That's awesome. I want to just put out something really quick that I'm excited about because I'm actually more interested and excited to have Matt on and see what he's got going on. But Miguel Zavala, I know everyone knows that name, right?
I do.
Actually,
Miguel.
the internet knows him more as MZ4250. He's
Yeah.
oh
I thought
yeah,
you meant
Him.
49, but
30,
okay.
38, 39 is a different guy. But he's a guy that's doing 3D miniatures for all sorts of fantasy-based stuff,
Oh, yeah.
and he's actually made miniature models for every monster in the monster manuals.
Whoa.
And
I didn't know
he has over 300 free miniatures on Shapeways. So, I mean, you have to get them printed somewhere, but it's really cool. It's really exciting. I remember reading, I don't know, a few months back that, he had started and there was like 20 miniatures that he put out there for everyone. And it's amazing. He's got like 300 and there's some purchase options for some of the more detailed.
Wait, so by free, you mean you can just go download
You
the
can just get the
file and
model.
print it yourself?
Yeah, the SRT files you can just grab.
Okay, because I was
If
under
you
the
have a 3D
impression.
printer, you just make them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was under the impression Shapeways just printed and then delivered them, but that they actually distribute the files as well.
From what I was reading on this update on the article is that it's on Shapeways, but you're right. I'm more familiar with you being able to purchase through Shapeways,
Yeah, no,
like
that's
their
cool. I didn't
printing
know that.
service. But I think there's like a profile where you can just download the models.
Oh, you can definitely download file. I have a friend of mine. I have several people I know actually at work that have 3D printers. Some of them on their desk at work.
Nice.
They just go download. When that technology first showed up, I went to Shapeways and downloaded like a dungeon tile and printed it out to see how it worked. And they definitely host SRT files. It's just that a lot of people who are using Shapeways to make money, obviously, if they give away the SRT file, then that's it.
Yeah.
There's no revenue. So what they do is say, no, you can't get the file. You can pay Shapeways to print it.
Sure. Which I think is a great way to do it.
Yeah, definitely
Sure.
support the guy.
Yeah, I
Support
mean,
Miguel.
3D printers have come down a lot in price, but I mean, they were pretty pricey when they first came out. I know Monoprice sells them now.
Oh.
The technology is still the consumer technology is still pretty primitive. I think.
Yeah.
Like the stuff that you get from Hero Forge, I think is better, and I think that stuff is getting better all the time.
Which they print through Shapeways as well.
Oh, they do. Yeah, they have got like crazy options like
they're
metal and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we were just talking about last week how we pretty much Brett has like 50 characters in
Like saved in there.
Forge.
Oh no, I haven't bought 50 characters.
No.
But I have them like
I
all
bought,
made, like ready to go.
I had all the players in my Tuesday night game go to Hero Forge and make minis for their guys, and then I paid for them and bought them. So I've got like 7 or 8 of
Nice.
them, and I want to go get them painted. I just haven't got around to it yet. I wanted to send them off and have somebody paint them.
What
and
did
that
you?
way, I beg your pardon?
What did you do for the detail option? Did you get the highest
I
detailed
went
ones?
for the expensive, like it ends up being like $30, I think.
Yeah.
25, 30,
So,
something like that.
Considering that like you get a mini and it's a unique custom made mini, like I'm like whatever, that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about miniatures last week, and I actually wanted to very briefly touch on that. I was kind of saying how I didn't think the detail in Hero Forge was that great, and I realized through talking that I bought the medium option.
Oh, yeah.
But I went back on their website the next day, all excited, talking about Hero Forge, and I see that they actually have steel and brass now, and you can get even more detailed if you get the brass.
And also, you can get them in larger scale. I think they've got versions
Oh,
that
yeah.
are bigger
Yeah.
than 25.
Yeah, like
But
this
the ones that, I mean, there are better minis out there, right? But
Yeah.
they're not 3D printed, custom made. So if you want to, unless you're a sculptor, if you want literally exactly your mini, then Hero Forge seems like they've got a good deal going.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's really cool actually to see a lot of new entrants to the miniature field because you
Sure.
have guys that are 3D artists from, they might be game industry guys or whatever, and they're not traditional hands-on sculptors.
Right, they don't have to work in green stuff. They can. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really cool to see. It's a lot of kind of, I don't want to say newer, but you get a lot more different art styles. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So 3D modeling, miniatures, that's what I was kind of excited about. But Matt, welcome to the show. Thank you again for coming on.
Thanks for having me on.
What are you excited about this week? What do you have going on?
I mean, I've always got lots of irons in the fire. Although I've been super busy all of a sudden, partially because of work, but also because of AdventureLookup.com, which we just started talking about. It's Tuesday, so yesterday, but it seems like a week has already gone by. So I mean, I'm super interested to see where things go with that. It looks like something is going to happen, but one never knows.
Sure.
You go an open source route, and it's easy for projects to kind of fall apart because it requires a certain amount of leadership and expertise and management. But there are a lot of people. We have a Discord server now, and people have been like doing work. Like I could do nothing right now, and I think by the end of the week, something's going to be usable.
That's
so
awesome.
It's just a question of like I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out.
That's exciting. It's rolling fast then.
Well, I mean, there are several programmers who have volunteered their time. There's a project manager who's volunteering his time. I've been incredibly busy the last 2 days in my day job, but I think things are cooling off a little bit. So, were it not for this, I would be on there right now trying to come up with user cases and user stories and stuff to kind of help these guys come up with the design. But it's an interesting challenge. I don't think anybody thinks that it can't be done. It's just a question.
It can definitely be done.
Right, but I mean, I've gotten messages from people. I mean, it's crazy. I've gotten messages on Reddit. I've gotten messages on YouTube where people have written 4 or 5 pages of text telling me how this isn't going to work and it's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's like, well, then it's not going to work, and then we move on and we do something else, But if it does work, it's one of those things where some people, and I don't think it's most people, some people are cynics, they're skeptical, they've worked on open source stuff before, or they think open source is crazy, and so when they hear about this, they're like, oh, let me tell you why it's unrealistic and it's not going to work. And my attitude is like, well, look, if that was the attitude I took, then we wouldn't even be trying.
Yeah.
So I kind of have to believe it's possible. And so far, we've got a lot of people saying, oh, it's perfectly possible. Like, what you want to do is not that crazy. It's just coming up with figuring out which way to do it. Right?
Sure.
So you have 10 people talking about it. They have 10 different ideas for a solution. So
yeah,
that's where we are right now.
Putting something on the internet, there's going to be a fraction of people that are haters, and that's just the reality.
Well,
of it.
I'm not a cynic, so I try to meet those people halfway and say, look, I know that you may have had some experience that leads you to believe that this isn't going to work because of A, B, and C, but use that experience to help me understand how we can make it work.
Yeah, you can identify pitfalls. And
exactly. And so we've had a lot of people volunteer their time. Because I haven't been in the Discord server in the past 24 hours, I really have no idea what's going on right now. But my good friend Jerry, who is the IT guy at Turtle Rock Studios, he's monitoring the Discord all the time. He's like, those guys, go IT. He's like, those guys are moving forward. They are not waiting for you. They're going to come up with something. And that makes me happy because I feel like if I just want to be the speaker for the customer. That's the way I describe myself.
Yeah.
I'm the one who I know how it needs to work. And one of the things, my next trick is going to be writing down a bunch of stuff where I describe what the user's experience should be, but in general terms that does not try to solve code problems. Like, this isn't the user interface. This isn't how we do it. This is just what the user should be able to do, because there's a tendency in a lot of designers to say, here's how I want this to work. Yeah. You're like, no, don't tell me that. It's my job to figure. It's the programmer's job to figure out how it works. You just tell me how it should behave. What do you want to get out of it, right?
Sure.
And then we will behind the scenes figure out how it should work. And that's something I've learned. And so hopefully that experience as a game developer will help me help these guys get the project in front of the user.
Sure. Yep. And we opened that Reddit thread and to get a bunch of questions in.
That was crazy.
Yeah,
I was super, super blown away by just the sheer number of people that I'm like, I kind of feel like I make these videos, so just
they
watch
love
the
you,
videos.
man. They love you. They like listening to you.
My point is, like, if you want to know something, just watch the video. We'll get to it, right?
Yeah. We're not going to be able to go through all those questions for sure, but we're going to do our best to link some of your videos to some of the responses, because there were questions where you've had videos already. But
exactly.
Before I mention what I was going to say, was there something you want to get in, James?
Oh no, there was a bug flying around.
I waved. I thought he was raising his hand saying I want to get something in. But since I mentioned the Reddit thread, because there were some specific adventure lookup questions, I was just looking through them really quick, and I really only see one because you touched on a lot of it. People were just kind of asking for an update.
Maybe we should talk so your listeners have some idea what we're talking about when we talk about adventurelookup.com.
Yeah, do you want to do a quick a run through?
The goal is I am ever since the invention of the internet, I have always had ideas for what I wanted to happen next in my campaign, and thought, gosh, it would be nice if there was already an adventure that did this. And I've worked in the business, and I know a lot. I've been around RPGs for a long time, and I know that there are literally thousands of adventures out there. There must be an adventure that already does what I want, to some extent, right? To save me some time. And I end up spending so much time looking for the damn things that I feel like I wasted all that time. And if there was some tool online where I could just go say, show me a 7th level adventure that features a mind flare, right? Because my players are 7th level and I think mind flares are cool, that would be neat. And then it shows me a list of what adventures have done that. Then I can go find that adventure. I can go to eBay, I can go to DriveThruRPG, I can go to DM's Guild, I can search for it online. But now at least I know it exists, right? And that's the tool. It's meant to be a discovery tool. It's not meant to host any adventures. Maybe it'll have links. Maybe it'll have links to the DriveThruRPG, the DM's. But the goal is just to make it so that you can find an adventure that saves you some time.
Yeah, that's actually one thing I think that it kind of leads into the fact that people are just taking this idea of yours and running with it already without real supervision on your part, is the fact that it's an awesome idea. I mean, just when we were getting ready for this podcast, going through our notes and stuff, we had to be careful. We were like, okay, let's stop coming up with cool ideas for this feature, because otherwise we'd just spend an hour talking about all these cool features we could brainstorm to tack on.
There's a lot of stuff the tool could do. And you're already seeing people come up with great ideas. Also, so you can see some really people that this is going to be part of my role is going to be like, no, hang on, you've gone a little bit overboard. Like, we do not need a field for the ISBN. Because A, no one is ever going to search by using the ISBN. B, if you've got the ISBN, you do not need our tool.
Exactly.
Because probably, for one thing, you're holding the adventure in your hand, because how else did you get the ISBN for this adventure? But B, you can just Google it, and you will find out what adventure that's for. So there are people who are like, they're looking at like, here's all the possible data. And it's like, wait, hang on.
Yeah.
Not all of that is useful. Not all of that is relevant. Do not overwhelm the user with stuff that they're like, is this important? Should I go look this up? No, it's not important. So, yeah, the tool can do a lot, but getting it into a usable shape early so people can start adding data to it. That is going to be the trick, by the way.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, it's not going to be hard to find people who are willing to enter the Temple of Elemental or Curse of Strahd, right? I'm sure we're going to be able to find people who are willing to open up their copy of Curse of Strahd, take some time, and fill out some of these fields, like which monsters are in Curse of Strahd. It's like coming up with people that can go through, the Judges Guild adventures from 1978.
Yeah.
Right? Like that is, and those, you know what? I have a deep fondness for the early history of the hobby, and I love some of those early adventures. And because of the kind of style that they were written in, not just because of the kind of pulpy style of the adventure, right? The kind of Conan-esque adventures those guys have, I am willing to spend the time to convert it to 5th edition and make it feel more modern. But you got to know that adventure exists. So the trick is going to be finding people who are willing to contribute their time for the obscure stuff that nobody has heard of or knows about.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. There's so many cool adventures in, old Dungeon magazine issues.
Yeah.
I mean, some of my favorite things that I will gleefully steal, like riverboats powered by captured water elementals and things like that,
cool.
are straight from Dungeon magazine adventures.
The problem is, like, no DM is an expert on this.
Yeah.
Like, if I say, hey, what's your favorite Dungeon magazine adventure? Let me tell you, I don't know you that well, but I know that you have not run every single one of them.
Not even close.
It's not possible.
No.
Right? So your favorite is actually pulled from a pool of, a dozen or so that you're actually familiar with and intimate with, of the hundreds that they made. So that's what I want to see. I want to see all these great obscure adventures that are someone else's favorite, that they loved and they discovered and they found, and then they put it in Adventure Lookup, they give it a high rating, and other people start checking it out. And then all these obscure, that's the goal. This is how we'll know when it's working, is all these obscure adventures start bubbling to the top. And it's like, great, now I've saved myself some work. I always feel when I sit down to roll my own adventure that all I'm doing is duplicating someone else's work that I don't know exists. That somebody else already did this, and now I just have to do it again because, you get it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah, it's an amazing idea. Go ahead.
I just had this silly, quick little idea.
Uh-oh.
If you wanted something random on the adventure lookup, have a button called the Mysterious Stranger, and you click on it, and he gives you a random adventure. Like, you just pick a level.
I think that's a cool idea because, again, it's a discovery tool.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you end up clicking on that button, you're like, whoa, what is this adventure? Who made this? This is an Empire of the Petal Throne adventure from 1970 whatever. And if you can find that adventure online, then you're going to, people are going to think that is neat. They're going to enjoy discovering those little hidden gems.
It's kind of like the Google I'm feeling lucky.
Yeah, sure.
Kind of thing.
Or you know what? I've actually found a lot of great subreddits just from clicking random subreddit. And I'm like, I didn't even know this place existed, but this is amazing.
Yeah.
So, sure. Why not?
Yeah, it's awesome. Is there anything you want listeners to do to help with Adventure Lookup?
I just, right now I think we have a happy surfeit of people volunteering. We have so many people volunteering that we need volunteers to help sift through the volunteers, right? So we have so many really qualified back-end database programmers that can do this, enterprise level guys, right? I had a guy volunteer to help who runs a team of database programmers, and he's like, we all play D&D, dude, I want to help. So if you're listening to this, I say just sit tight. The thing is, go find that obscure adventure you bought when you were a kid and have it ready so that when the tool goes live, you can tell us when it was published and what it's about and what kind of monsters are in it and what kind of magic items you can find, because that's where I think technologically, everything we're talking about can be done. The trick is, will people use it?
No, I think people will use it.
They will use it in proportion with the obscurity of the content.
Yeah.
If all they're getting, when they search for stuff, if all they get is Temple of Elemental Evil and Red Hand of Doom and Curse of Strahd or Ravenloft, it's like, well, those are famous, right? You don't need this tool to find those, right? It's when you discover all these great, this, like I said, like you were talking about, there's a lot of great Dungeon Magazine stuff. A lot of companies like AEG and Green Ronin wrote lots of adventures for 3rd edition back in the day. Privateer Press, the guys that do War Machine, that company exists because they made adventures for 3rd edition.
All right.
Yeah.
So
I remember that.
everyone, be on the lookout. Get your magazines out of the basements and be ready.
That's what
comb
we need
those,
people to enter obscure data.
The only question I want to ask, because you covered so much of people's questions on there, but someone specifically asked if there's going to be Pathfinder information on there as well.
Sure. I mean, look, I'm not pardon me, I'm not an edition warrior, right?
Yeah.
From my point of view, Pathfinder is D&D. And I know that there are people who are like, oh, but it's super important the way Pathfinder is different from 3.5. And I'm like, look, you're talking to somebody who doesn't think 3.5 is that much different than 3. Like, it's as far as I'm concerned, if you told me we were playing 3rd or 3.5 or Pathfinder, I'd be like, that's cool. I know that system, right? And I think important enough, like, here's the issue. If you want to enter an adventure from villains and vigilantes, that's going to be pretty useless to the average D&D DM. Right, because it's set in the modern day and it's about superheroes and it's like, what the hell's going on? But if you want to enter a Pathfinder adventure, that is absolutely relevant to anyone running Dungeons and Dragons in any edition. The idea is obviously, the closer it is to the edition you love, then the more likely you are to use it. But I think even the act of converting it, like I find it super easy to convert stuff into 5th edition, for instance. Yeah. So I'm like, bring on the Pathfinder, and that's people are like, oh my god, Pathfinder is so much content. I'm like, look. Like that's good. It's good that there's that. That you are describing the problem. The problem is there's a ton of content, right? So now we've got to sift through it and give us a tool to find the stuff we want.
Yeah. So it's got orcs and plate mail. So I think we can make do.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, excellent. So Adventure Lookup, you guys, everyone, keep an eye out for that. It's going to be really great. I really wish you all the success with that because I think it's a great tool. Well, it will be a great tool. I already picture the idea. I see it working.
Yeah, well, there you go. It's been prophesized.
I think that's one of the reasons people are engaging is because it's actually not that complex an idea. They can imagine it in their head, and they start thinking about how to implement it.
Well, not to go on and on, but one of the cool things about it to me is that it's so cool for new D&D fans because that's one thing I'm just consistently surprised by on going through the D&D subreddit is how many new players there are, and it's so cool to see that. And also, it's generally younger players, and that's the sort of tool where it's an internet-based thing where it's going to really resonate. And I think that is just it's super cool. So
yeah, and I think there's a philosophical argument to be had that you should not want to go buy an adventure. You should roll your own, and that's if that's your attitude, I say go for it. But I think a new DM starting off these days has a lot. Their time is sliced a lot finer than mine was in 1986, right? They've got a lot more on their plate as far as social media, as far as games and stuff like that. And so I want to make it as easy as possible for that new DM to find some cool adventure they want to run. Like, why isn't there a field in AdventureLookup.com that says, I only want to look for starter adventures, right? Adventures that were explicitly written for new DMs and new players. There's no reason we can't do it. We can absolutely do that, right? And so now it's like, okay, here's a bunch of them, and let me pick the one I want. Like, it kind of frustrates me that there isn't from my point of view, there isn't a really good starter adventure that has that is a dungeon crawl, right? A couple of them feature, like, a one-level dungeon or something like that, but I often want something with a little bit more juice. So this is a problem the tool will solve, hopefully.
Yeah, that was super common in those old basic D&D modules that I could see being perfect for this. So yeah.
Well, I think we're ready to jump into our first topic for the evening, and we're going to talk about character downtime in between game sessions.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of one of the things we ran into was if you're running a 3-hour session every 2 weeks, you don't want to spend half hour to an hour going, okay, what did you do? And we did that a little bit in our Jesus Christ, that's a big
mosquito.
Bug. Sorry.
Bug.
And so, don't get me wrong, that kind of roleplay can be fun, but if it's something you can take care of pretty easily between games, that's something we'd rather do. So that's kind of that's what we wanted to explore for this topic.
Yeah. And then, Brett, you came up with a fun way for something we're trying this week, and you can let listeners know about that. But the question really kind of becomes regarding character downtime. The things that they're doing between these game sessions, do you think these types of interactions are necessary to the game? And if so, how much time do we put towards that?
Well, I think it's necessary.
Yeah, it's 100% necessary.
Personally.
I mean, most of our players would assert that leveling up is necessary.
Well, yeah.
At the bare minimum. That's all I'd want to do.
Well, stay at second level the whole time.
I mean, I suppose there's one thing to be said. You could have, where your second game starts the very moment your last game ended. And there's no downtime.
Yeah, especially if you ended on a cliffhanger, right?
Yeah. And as long as you're playing with as soon as you hit the level, you level up type of thing. You don't have to go and train. That could be fine. But I think, personally, a lot of players like to have between games this thought, again, if it's not on a cliffhanger, that they're doing something even when you're not playing, when you're not watching them. They're off doing their shopping, or they're leveling up, or skinning a bear or something like that. So I like to have a little bit of downtime between the games. But for instance, after this last game and before the next one, I give you guys a little bit more downtime, but I don't want it to feel like months. I want it to be like there's some pressure. There's something coming up that you guys know about. Something's coming, and you only have so much time to prepare for that. So I think that's keeping the tension.
You want that sense of a clock ticking.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think it's an orc army.
Yeah, it might be. It might be an army of orcs.
Yeah, I might possibly know if it's an orc army or not.
Yeah. So, can I talk about what I've been doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
You should.
So, and actually, I'd like to hear your feedback on this as well, Matt. But what I've done is I created a Facebook page, a little secret Facebook page for us that I've called the Barfing Bugbear because it's the name of our.
It's our
I
tavern
love it.
name.
I love it already. Yeah.
So it's the name of our tavern, and the concept of our tavern was we wanted to build it as a place for adventurers to come. And jokingly, like, oh, we'll have mysterious strangers in the corner, like, just giving you missions when people come by. But that aside, I created this page, and the thought was, between the games, I would post kind of the epilogue for the last game, a little bit of a recap of what happened, and then let the players know you have this many days till the next game starts. What would you like to do? Go ahead and post on here. And I even created a poll, if you just want to click on the thing that says,
That's
I want
cool.
to explore. I'm going to explore. I want to go shopping. I want to fortify the walls. And then detail it out. And everybody jumped on and started writing out these long, kind of stories. I had written out something kind of long, and then John jumped in, was talking about how Traynor was off scouting, and, it's really detailed description.
Mm-hmm.
And we got all that, which was awesome. So we all kind of had an idea what we were doing. And then today I started private messaging each one of the players with a, okay, Traynor, when you were out scouting, this is what you saw. And I set up a little situation, and I trust him, so I just said, roll this, roll a fighting check, and tell me how you did. And then depending on how he rolled, I just wrote what happened from that, and then that's that. And so when we start playing again on Saturday, I can just kind of have a brief description, mention how Traynor comes back to town, and then the players will kind of have this idea that something was going on. So that's what I've been doing, and I think it's a lot of fun.
I think that's a great idea because you're using technology. Surely that's the solution, right? Is the fact that you can create a Google Hangout, you can create a Facebook group that allows the players to, and you also did something that's smart, which is what I was going to suggest, so you guys don't need me. The fact that, I think players, especially new players, they don't know what their options are, right? And when you tell them, okay, well, we're not going to play for another couple of weeks, what do you guys want to do? They're like, well, what is there to do? What they want to do is they want to play. Right?
Yeah.
If you ask, what do you want to do? I want to play. Well, okay, we can't play. So here are some options. And if you give them a menu, then you give them stuff to engage with. And then now you're off and running. You've got an internet medium with which you can communicate either in groups or individually, and you've given them some options. And of course, once you give them some options, they start imagining others. Right? Well, if I can do that,
exactly.
can I do this? Right? But they need those ideas to get jump started, and I think that's great. And then it's always fantastic for players to come back to the group after they've gone and done something, because now they have their own experience, and it's up to them to decide to what extent to share that with the rest of the group. And that is a great character moment, right? All of a sudden, all of a sudden, you have a new role playing opportunity. Like, how much do I tell this group about what happened? Yeah, I think that's I love that stuff.
Cool.
I mean, back in the 80s, we had to do it. We had to literally physically get on a phone and say, "Hey, do you want to get together and play?" And so we managed to make it work. Like, we did all sorts of stuff in downtime, and we would stop playing our regular game for weeks while we in other words, our game night became board games and stuff like that, and you'd be playing D&D like on one-on-one adventures with the DM off on your own. And then when we started playing again, when everyone got together, they each had their own story to tell about what they had done, and that stuff's great.
Yeah, one-on-one adventures are a lot of fun. We've done that a little bit in the past with great success, and that's actually one thing we've usually mostly kept to like 0 level adventures where you're figuring out who your character is.
What kind of character you're going to be, yeah. There's actually a book, a hardcover book that TSR published back in 1980, whatever, called Greyhawk Adventures that has actual rules for beginning at 0 level.
Oh, you know what? They have that down at our game store. I almost picked it up the other day.
Yeah, actually...
And my memory of that is better than probably the actual thing is. My memory of it was right.
It always is.
Right. That's the way. Yeah, exactly. But that as a result, I believe that even if what's in that book is not usable, you could make something that was, because the idea was you would try out different stuff. You weren't a thief yet. You could try to pick somebody's pocket, and if you were successful, you gained a little bit of pickpocket skill. And let's say you then you felt guilty, so you go to the church and you end up through a bunch of role playing, you become a paladin. Well, from then on, you're a paladin, but you have this pickpocket skill. You have this thing that you learn, and it's not just like a menu that you pick from. You actually role played that, and you remembered thinking, I was hungry, and so I stole, right? And then I repented and became a paladin. And you have a great story, and you have great abilities that support that. And that is, I thought that was fantastic. We used it. One of my favorite characters started off that way.
We should go pick up that book, so that way when adventurelookup.com is ready,
we can enter it.
We can enter it in there.
Actually,
just remember that I said that I remember it probably better than it was.
Yeah, we actually...
I have got a copy of that book. It's great.
On our last podcast, we went over a module, actually, that a YouTube commenter had asked about that had a very similar mechanic. I think it was a 2nd edition module. Do you guys remember what it was called? It was like Shipwrecked or Treasure Hunt.
Anyway.
I should remember this. I edited it just last week. But anyways, but it did have. It wasn't a 0th level adventure where it had kind of a quick summary of rules like that, and I was super inspired by that. So I might be doing a quick homebrew.
I think that stuff is great. Players love the act of role playing their backstory. Right. Instead of just rolling and instead of picking a background, getting together with the DM and actually role playing something, it doesn't have to be long either. It can just be one session. But now they have that memory. The memory is a real memory, right? And so when they play their character, they remember being a 0 level person walking into Greyhawk, right?
Yeah, and what's cool specifically about 5th edition with this that I really like is you've got backgrounds as a template of this is where you should end up roughly at the end of that. So
right, like let the player do what he wants and then come up with a background that represents what he did.
Yeah.
You just played your background. Let's give you some abilities and some gear and stuff like that reflects the cool adventure you had.
Exactly.
Matt, I want to ask, how do you feel about shopping? Characters wanting to go to the stores and spend gold on items.
It makes my life easy because I just sit back and surf the web while they... this is great. I had all this content ready, but I was freaking out that you guys were going to burn through it, but you just spent an hour and a half buying stuff. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Let's have more of that.
Yeah.
I actually... The kind of games I've been running recently do not afford shopping sprees because the games I run, if you watch my video, the games I run typically are about chaos versus civilization, wilderness versus civilization. So the players spend a lot of time, like, it's a big deal that these guys just found a keep that is a ruined keep, but they're going to try and fix it up. There's no store there. It's not a mall. There's no Starbucks. Right? So these guys, they've got money, but really there's not that much to spend it on other than hiring local villagers and stuff to fix the keep. So, I mean, there are big cities in my campaign setting, and if they wanted to go off the rails and say, screw it, we're going to head over to this place, it's like, that's fine, and now there are magic shops. But in general, unless I'm running a high magic urban game, like something set in Tolis, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Tolis, but it's great. If I were setting it like that, shopping is fine. It's a part of what the players want to do. And actually, I do end up, the players want stuff, but what's in the book is not always what I want to give them. I typically want to give them something better than what's in the book, because the book is a generic thing, and like, well, this guy doesn't have a generic thing, but he has this one specific named item that does what this generic version does, plus it's got one or two other cool things on it. I think the player should feel special.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I always felt that downtime portion for me was one of those, okay, hurry up. I don't care about buying anything. I'm not doing any sort of, I'm not going to go buy extra arrows. I'm not going to go do this. Let's just get to the game.
Are you speaking as a player?
As a player, yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's obviously like anytime, like there are players that don't like combat, right? Those players are weird, but but they exist. They exist, right? So
yeah, I was kind of flabbergasted when you just said that.
It's always the DM's job to kind of like to take the tenor of the room, right, and say, are these players over here kind of monopolizing this player over here's time? And really, what happens in a shopping spree? Like, I don't know if you guys watch Critical Role, but like, the Matt Mercer's role playing group on Geeky Center. But those guys will spend an hour and a half shopping, like live on TV.
It's because they could be super entertaining doing it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because they're telling jokes and stuff like that. But if you watch those guys, not all of them are as engaged as the ones who are like, ooh, right? But like, there are some players who, I had a friend of mine who was showing his wife World of Warcraft, and they were in World of Warcraft playing together. And she was like, okay, she wasn't not having fun, but she obviously wasn't hooked. And she's first level, and she watches a 60th level, this tells you how long ago it was, watches a 60th level character ride by on their way to Ironforge on like a flaming horse. And she's like, oh my God, what is that? And he's like, oh, that's a warlock. And she's like, can I get all that stuff? She's got like a flaming crown, a cool dress. And he's like, yeah, let's just go to Ironforge now. And as soon as she saw all these high-level characters, she was like at the mall. She was like, can I get one of those? Can I get one of those? Can my character look like that? And my friend Chad was like, dude, she was hooked, right? So there's the stereotype that girls like shopping. But look, like, stereotypes are one thing. There are girls that like shopping, right? And so if you put the thing, they're like, ooh, and that tendency comes out all the time. It's not just girls that like that, guys. If I go to Fry's, I can't leave that place and not spend less than $100. Like, it's crazy. So there is that kind of shopping gene. Lots of people have it, and let them do that. But is there anything that's happening in that moment that has to happen at the table? I say thee nay. Like, you can do all that stuff offline.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree.
That's not accidental. Having worked on a few MMOs, making sure high-level players are mixing it up in those main social hubs with the lobbies just so they can see what they could attain is huge in getting people retained.
Aspirational goals are the hugest thing.
And I am 100% guilty of that. If you leave me alone in an MMO, I will probably not level very much, but I will look goddamn fantastic.
I often, I tend to forget that my players... I typically run D&D for people that have never played before, and for me, that's the juice. I love being somebody's first dungeon master, and I sometimes forget. Wait, these guys haven't been playing the game for 30 years. They haven't read the entire Dungeon Master's Guide. They haven't read any of it. And so, one of the things that works for DMs is trot out a high-level NPC that can do some badass shit. Bust out Gandalf and have Gandalf do his cool stuff, and then have Gandalf leave, and the players are like, I want to be that guy. I didn't know you could do that. Right, and it gives them something to aspire to. My players met a wizard who had his own Darren's Instant Fortress, right? And they did not know what that was. They had never heard of this. But when they found out it was like a fucking Pokemon Fortress, they were like, I want one of those.
Fortress.
Right? So, like, they were hooked. If the DM doesn't put this stuff in front of the players in some way, it doesn't have to be a shop. It can be an NPC that has this stuff. How do they know it exists? How do they know what they want? Like, it's up to you.
It's Darren's instant bounce house.
Bouncing castle.
Yeah, that's huge. I never actually, it's funny, having seen it in an MMO scape, I never thought to, I mean, obviously I've had, NPCs that are high-level cruise through our games and stuff, but I never thought about it through that lens of,
Dude,
the aspirational goals.
It's one thing to spend all your time masturbating into a Microsoft Word document describing all the different factions in your setting and expecting a player to read it and engage with that. It's another thing for them to meet one of the Hawk Lords. Right. And he's on a giant owl. And they're like, wait, there are dudes who have giant owls? And you're like, yeah, but can I be one of those people? It's like, yes, you can. Right? Like, it's putting putting it in. You have to put this. Inventing it is one thing, but you haven't. You're not done. Once you've invented it, you're not done. Now you have to put it in front of the players in a meaningful way, and then they start engaging with it, and their imagination starts working, and they're like, now maybe they hate those guys because the Hawklords are bad guys, and it wasn't until they met one he was cruel to them that they really engaged, or maybe they like these guys because they have great uniforms and they can fly around. But until they see it in the world and until they engage with it, it's all just text on the page.
Yeah, with Mikhail with his griffin. I'm referencing our last campaign that we aired.
Well,
When he flew down on the griffin, all I was thinking was like, I want a fucking griffin, man. Like,
Yeah.
Like, wow, I want one of those things. So yeah, I think there's a lot of advice online telling DMs not to use high-level NPCs because of the DM PC phenomenon. But the fact that there is a bad way to do it doesn't mean it should just never happen.
I like trying to interweave legends and lore based off of our old D&D characters. Like, we have some that specifically James and I have referenced 80 billion times on the show, but I like to write them into my backstory or mention them in the game as just these legendary characters that are in the world. Because then, for instance, my wife, she's a new player, and she'll ask me, she'll be like, "So wait, Bovar was your character?" I was like, "Yeah, that was my dude, that was my man." And she's like, "Well, what level was he?" And honestly, I can't remember.
We
were really high.
Switched over to Savage Worlds, I think, in the mid-teens.
Yeah.
So if we had stayed in D&D, we probably would have hit about 20.
Yeah. So
It's crazy. I've never had a character go that far.
well, the idea being that
it was a hard
illustrates that you can be like that. You can get to that level if you just stick with it.
Yeah, we were very committed on that one. That was the original Orc-Chop Express where we were meeting. I think it was like every week or every other week.
Just about every week, yeah.
I think it was every week, and
we all lived a lot closer.
Yeah, it was simpler days.
Yeah, you can get from first to 20th level a lot faster when you're all in high school or college, and you can just play like it's summer and you can play literally every day.
Yeah,
and that's actually kind of the catalyst for our topic tonight, simply because this isn't a problem we've had to really deal with before. Just having a half hour dedicated to, all right, let's catch up from last time was never a big deal until now. Brett's got kids, we've all got jobs, we're all, and just the technology making everyone's life that much more rapid. All of a sudden we're like, wait, you know what? Let's not do this.
Let's not spend all this time at the beginning of the game just talking about.
I'd rather be killing orcs and adventuring.
Yeah, but you have so many tools online now to make it so that like the game is no longer that thing that happens between everyone sitting at the table and everyone going home. The game is this thing that's kind of can always be happening, right? Like you can use fantasy grounds if you want to do stuff even when you can't get together. There's all sorts of solutions now. I had a friend of mine who his favorite experience playing D&D was at work. We were at work. This is when I was working at a company called Pandemic Studios on a game called Mercenaries, and we had just played the night before.
I love Mercenaries, by the way.
Oh, really? I'm glad.
The first one I could not get enough.
That first one was that first one was special. The second one was special in the manner in which we screwed it up. And he, like the night before, bad things had happened, and he got it into his head to try to save the captured player. And he's like, "Can I do this on my own?" And I'm like, "Yeah, start making." And we just spent. I mean, I can say this now because I don't work there anymore, but we literally did no work that day. He was over in his cubicle, and I was in my cubicle, and we did it all over IM. We were sitting 8 feet from each other, but we did it all over IM, and we played an entire session. And he would get up and walk over to my desk, and he would roll dice. Right, and go back and sit down at his desk, and no one really thought anything of it. Right, and at the end of that night, at the end of the day, he had saved the girl and brought the party back together and had a great story to tell. And because he got that focus, like that exclusivity from me, years later he would say that was the coolest thing I ever did in D&D. That's the thing he remembers the most. That's one of the things I find is that solo play, because it is so intense narratively, right? It's the thing the player tends to remember for a long time.
Indeed.
Wow. That's some team building.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really enjoying all the back and forth with Brett and what he's doing with the downtime.
It's like it's the same idea, really.
It is, and in this case, it just gives me time to think about, okay, what would Traynor do in this situation? It's like, well, he would go scout out everything and report back. He's a ranger. What else is he going to do?
Right, yeah.
I'm not going to go shopping. I'm not going to go check to see which magic items we found were there. I don't care about any of that stuff. That's not his bag.
Well, and also one of the cool things about using the internet as a medium for playing, text-wise, like for someone like me, I enjoy writing, so I can write much more eloquently than I can speak or act.
Sure.
So, for me, that's a treat because I can go off and be
Well,
very
listen,
descriptive.
have you tried Fantasy Grounds or Roll20?
We haven't.
haven't
We
yet.
actually thought about doing that, just jumping in and doing one-offs with people.
Let me tell you, like, I have friends of mine who I love playing D&D with them, but I did not appreciate them as players until they had the opportunity to communicate exclusively through typing. Right, and then all of a sudden, these are people I liked and people I liked playing with, but then all of a sudden they blossomed, and you saw, wow, there was a lot going on in this guy's head creatively.
Yeah.
But he's not somebody who's interested in speaking in character or competing with all the other people at the table. But when you're in Fantasy Grounds, you can just be sitting there typing, and after a while this block of text shows up. And also the cool thing about Fantasy Grounds, I use that as an example. I'm sure you can do it in Roll20. The cool thing about Fantasy Grounds is you can do stuff in it that it doesn't make any sense at the table. Like, you can emote and have like my friend Aaron runs a character named Kenway, and he'll do like /emote.
Yeah.
Kenway thinks your character is lying to him, but says nothing.
Yeah, that's
Right?
freaking
Like,
awesome.
I just saw into your character's internal monologue in a way that I can't do at the table, right? And all of a sudden, like, doing it online started to seem like maybe it could be better than doing it in person because of the opportunities it afforded people to express themselves.
Yeah, that's actually one reason. And I got my first glimpse of that playing MMOs and seeing people roleplay in there and jumping into a bit
Sure,
of that.
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they get made, they're oft maligned just because they're seen as the geekiest of the geeks in an MMO. But
People who are on the RP server on the MMO, yeah.
yeah, but I mean, then you're like looking at the reality of people inside a virtual world playing elves and dwarves, making fun of people that are somehow nerdier
Sure.
than them. It's pretty hilarious. But
But it's one of those things that we know that behavior and we feel like we understand it in an MMO. This gets back to the shopping thing, right? We feel like we understand it in an MMO, but it just doesn't occur to us
Yeah.
that we could be doing all that stuff in D&D.
yeah, so seeing that's the writing as a means of communication for roleplay, it is really cool to see happen and to participate in. So that would be something I wouldn't mind checking out.
Yeah, I strongly recommend Fantasy Grounds in spite of how weird it is.
Yeah, I thought it was all microphones. I didn't realize there were people that did straight text.
In fact, I'm about to blow your mind.
Uh-oh.
You can type something in Fantasy Grounds, and there's a little drop-down menu. It used to be, but now there's a little drop-down menu, and you can select Orcish.
Oh.
You just typed in English, and you hit return, and all the other players playing can only read what you wrote if their character sheet says they speak Orcish.
That is
that's amazing.
fucking rad.
Right?
Oh my
Otherwise,
God.
They see a unique, and it's different for Orcish and Elvish and Dwarvish and all these languages. They see your text show up in this unique font, right? So it looks like all of a sudden you started speaking Orcish,
That's
right? And it's like,
pretty
this
pimp.
is amazing. We've had
I speak
entire
Orcish
conversations. Suddenly, this mechanic that's in Dungeons and Dragons language that nobody ever uses suddenly becomes this amazing role-playing opportunity, like being able, like, suddenly that orc is talking to Bob and none of us have any idea what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah.
And yeah, that kind of stuff is amazing.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
that's
we
great.
actually use language quite a bit. In fact, Trainor, his Elvish is amazing.
God.
Oh yeah, you should
We
give him
have
some
a
of your
sample.
Elvish.
Sure. What do you want me? You want me to say
dragon?
what? Oh,
The
there's a
dragon's
dragon nearby. There's a dragon nearby. Pluck talk.
What language is that?
Oh, that's Elvish.
Oh, clearly.
That's Elvish?
That's our group's Elvish.
That's our
It's
group's Elvish.
fairly
That's our Elvish, yeah.
Klingon-esque.
Let me
just
tell you,
play
I'm going
around
to tell you a
with
quick story. I'm going to tell you a quick story.
Sure.
I'm going to do this as fast as I can. My friends and I have known each other for about 30 years, and we're now old enough that some of us have kids, and those kids are now old enough to play D&D with us. And there's a lot of gatekeeping. They're like, no, you're too young, right? And now they're teenagers, and so my friend Dave's son, Zach, is at the table with us, and we're playing, and they're fighting some orcs, and they know there's an orc leader around here somewhere, but they don't know where he is. And so what I did was I texted, even though he's sitting 2 feet away from me, I texted my friend Jim, the only player at the table whose character spoke Orcish, and I just texted, the orc says, quote, let them go, end quote. And so Jim's phone goes, "Mer, mer," and he looks at his phone and he goes, oh, okay. And he waits. He doesn't say anything. I don't know how he intuited this, but we played together so long. And after a minute or two, I said, okay, you guys hear an orc say, Bazan Kazaa, right? And they're like, holy shit, what does that mean? And Jim goes, the orc said, let them go. And Zach looked at Jim. He's like, how do you know what he said? And Jim looks at him and goes, I speak Orcish. And Zach, for about 30 30 seconds, Zach believed that Jim and I, like it was Klingon, like a real language that human beings could learn and speak, right? And after about 30, and my friend Craig, while this is going on and Zach's mind is being blown, my friend Craig, who really wasn't part of this exchange, looked at me and goes, "This is amazing."
That's so cool.
Seconds, go, wait a minute, I figured it out. He remembered the phone went off. He's like, okay, yeah. But yeah, I mean, that happened. And
That's
language
amazing.
can be a lot of fun to play around
I love
with
it.
in D&D.
I
I'm
love
so
that
doing
there's,
that to my
there's
kids.
been another group that's used this language.
Yeah.
It's great.
Well, God, who? It's perfect Elvish for me.
My brother always texts me mid-game, and I never get it until like 2 hours later. I'm like, that would have been so useful.
It's great when texting. The fact that everybody at the table has a cell phone now, a smartphone, makes my job as DM a lot easier because I can communicate them directly and in secret, basically.
Yeah.
Often, when you pass notes, people see the notes, but if you're just typing on your phone, people don't even notice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. We actually had some note passing, and that made me wonder a little bit why we still do such an archaic
Yeah,
thing.
It's just like, don't we all have like these like incredible machines in our pockets that we can just like text each other with? Yeah.
I like writing the notes ahead of time though, so I'm not sitting there. It kind of breaks me out of my zone
Yeah, I could see
if I'm
that.
sitting there on my phone. Like,
Well,
texting
obviously,
someone,
yeah.
but-
I mean, I guess it depends on how much time you spend on your phone natively.
yeah.
But it also depends on, is this a handout? Like, if it's a handout, yeah, you can prep that ahead of time.
That's
I'll
true.
just
Yeah.
start tweeting it, right?
I mean,
Well,
also,
yeah,
that's
you
how
know,
it
it
also
works.
depends. Like, if it's like, it's a potion. Like, this character is the only one who knows it's a potion of Stone Giant Strength. It's easier for me just to take the 3x5 card in front of me and write Stone Giant Strength and hold it up to him, right? Than it is to get my phone out and get my app running and stuff like that. So it all depends on the context. But yeah, I think that's the great thing about this technology is it gives us more options, right?
It does, yeah. I mean, the apps alone, the character apps,
yeah.
the character creation apps, and the character sheets, those are.
You know what I miss?
Really
I miss
great.
the 4th edition Ecology. That was special and unique, and there was nothing like it before that, and there was nothing like it after that, because you could make a character in 4th edition online, and the tool they had for doing it was super easy to use, right? You're just dragging and dropping and making simple choices. Most of my players liked making characters. They would make extra characters because it was so much fun to do. But then you could export that character as an XML file, and this dude wrote a tool called the Combat Manager. And the Combat Manager would take your login for the DDI, the Wizards of the Coast online tools, and you could tell it, I want you to scrub all the monsters. And it would go, okay, and it would take 10 minutes, and it would download all the monsters, right? And then you could build an encounter and say there are 2 orcs in here, and grab the XML file for your players' characters, and now you had everything you needed to run combat. You knew all their ACs, and you could just click a button, and it would roll initiative for everybody. And you could give everybody, it would work to a second monitor. I could have on the big screen in our conference room, I could have everyone's initiative up there, and it would track all the conditions. It would track everybody's hit points and stuff. And that interaction between the tools Wizards of the Coast made online and this tool this guy wrote called the Combat Manager, I've never seen anything like it. It made my life so easy.
I'm surprised we don't see anything like that now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they've done some work to open 5th edition, and I think one of the reasons they did that, right, the stuff you see with the DMs Guild. I was one of the beta testers for Morningstar. Do you guys remember that?
No.
I don't.
Morningstar was Wizards of the Coast proprietary third-party 5th edition character creation app.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which was the iPad and was awful. And there were lots of beta testers. I wasn't special. I'm sure lots of people said what I said, which was, this app is terrible because the people you hired are database specialists. They don't know anything about iOS programming, and the iOS ecology has its own logic. Like, if you press a button, you expect it to behave a certain way in all apps, right? That's the idea of the app ecology, is they all kind of work the same way. And this thing didn't work like any other program you'd ever used. I'm like, this is terrible. And they wisely canceled the project, thank God. Better not to launch it. But instead of replacing it with something better, I think they opened 5th edition. I think that was their point. And now you can go get the data for characters and monsters and stuff, and I think people can make their own apps, and these guys are just sitting around waiting for that to happen.
Yeah, I think we've had some experience with a lot of different character apps and all sorts of different combat management.
What do you guys
apps.
use?
What was the one that we settled on?
I
know
edition character
Yep.
sheet.
it's the green D20
Yeah,
on
it's
my
a very
phone.
generic name.
Yeah, it's 5th edition
But
character sheet.
even that one, as good as it is it's far from flawless. And we've had a couple of mishaps in our games.
Yeah.
I won't call out any names, Mike, but certain characters having abilities they shouldn't have and whatnot. But
because the tool doesn't validate, right?
Yeah, you've got
lets
to.
you do things. That's why I use I call it, I affectionately, but also I'm being critical of it when I do this. I call it the executive character sheet. I use an Excel sheet called the Forged Anvil, So you have to have Excel for one thing, which apparently not everybody has. But it's on EN World. This guy made it, and it is unbelievably powerful. Like, it knows
check
the
that
rules
out.
of D&D better than you do. So if it
Good,
says
yeah.
you get +5 to hit, you get +5 to hit. And you're like, where is that coming from? It's like, trust the sheet. The sheet knows everything. And it's incredibly complicated. It's not an easy tool. It's really for power users. But it's got a whole worksheet just for, I should say a tab. It's got a whole tab just for your familiar, if you're classed as a familiar. It's got a whole tab just for spells, right? It knows all the rules of the game. And it lets you, it also has all the spells in it. So when you print your spell sheet out, it has a line for every spell you know how to cast, summarized, right? It's not the entire text of the spell, but it's usually enough for you to go, oh yeah, it does 2d6 per level, and there's a saving throw versus reflex, right? That kind of stuff.
That's
So yeah,
amazing.
that's a great. It's
I'm
great,
gonna check
but
that out.
it's Excel and it's not simple.
Yeah, I would like you to
I know
read
some
the
Excel.
book first too, though.
Nah.
It's not a replacement.
So you have some context. They're the DMs. I'm the new player.
Oh, I get it.
But
Yeah, he
I've
refuses
had
to
some
read the
learning
book.
curves. I've had some learning curves.
Well, the thing I like about the Forged Anvil sheet is that players, even though it's tough to use, not lying, players learn more about D&D. They're like, oh, I didn't know I got 2 more languages from my background. I didn't even notice that. Or, oh,
Yeah.
wow, I didn't realize that this is how this thing worked. And the sheet knows, so the sheet tells you.
That seems like an amazing tool. Definitely. Gonna check
Well,
that out.
yeah, I mean, it's pretty much what you'd expect if you just imagine an incredibly complex Excel sheet.
I know some Excel. I pretty much can imagine there being like 40 tabs. So
Yeah.
there's a lot
It's crazy.
going on there. Well, alignment. You guys want to jump in? You think we're ready?
Yeah, just a quick rundown on how this segment usually goes. We roll an alignment, and then we spend a certain amount of time just going over what that alignment is. And then we'll go over a popular character that is pulled off of, the handy-dandy memes that people make where they've got an example for each
Sure.
alignment that's usually wrong and frustrating. but
But isn't it cool that we live in an age where, like, there are people who the only thing they know about D&D is that their favorite show has this 3x3 alignment grid.
yeah,
They don't
exactly.
know, right? They don't. They know what lawful good is just because they know this character is lawful good. I think that's
Exactly.
amazing.
Well, given they're right, because a lot of the time, I mean, I think out of, we've done like 6 or 5 now.
Yeah.
I think we've only found 2 that we considered right.
That's.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's part of the discussion. But consider that, like, of all the weird things about D&D, one of the things that has penetrated our culture the most is the idea of alignment. Right, and
Yeah.
that characters like Finn from Adventure Time are like, that's against my alignment, right? And they have all these alignment charts. I think that stuff is. It's funny that this incredibly weird thing from D&D ended up being so popular.
And it's one of the oldest mechanics that's remained untouched for so long.
True.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Matt, are you familiar with alignments? Have you talked about alignments? I'm making a joke, obviously, because I've watched your alignment chats.
Yeah, and people got really, it's pretty much what I expected to happen happened. Where people were like, oh my God, how can you not say, what about Judge Dredd? I'm like, okay, yes, Judge Dredd's a great example. Like, people had their own pet thing that they wanted to talk about. And that's the same reason I didn't want to do an alignment video and the reason I did do an alignment video.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Don't worry, I brought up Judge Dredd, and I didn't scold you for it. So
I mean,
My
Judge
hands are
Dredd's a
clean.
great example. Judge Dredd's a great example. He's just somebody does not loom large in my cultural background.
sure,
All
makes sense.
right, well, hey, let's roll it off.
Roll those dice.
All right. So we're going to talk about Lawful Evil.
Yeah, that's my
Alright.
favorite.
And Matt,
Lawful
I'm gonna let you break down Lawful Evil for us. How would you describe
probably
Lawful
knows
Evil
it
to
better.
someone?
Better than
Well, I
me
mean,
too, even.
a character who's lawful in my campaign and from my point of view, and I'm the first person to say I think alignment is something that it's up to each DM to interpret themselves. But from my point of view, a character who's lawful evil definitely believes that there should be order, right? That there should be laws, that there should be a state, right? That man should not live naturally out in the woods, out in the forest, left to his own devices. There should be organization, and that's the lawful part. And the evil part is, and that should serve me, right? And it should be me at the top, right? Or me exploiting it, me using it to serve my own ends. In other words, it's the opposite. The evil part is it's the opposite of selflessness. It's selfishness. It's somebody who, anytime they have the opportunity, they seize more power, right? And they're not There are a lot of movies. There's a great movie with Tom Cruise called Valkyrie, where it's all about this plot, a real thing, a plot to kill Hitler. So you see Hitler in this movie, and it's always tricky when you put Hitler in a movie, right? Because this guy is like a monster in our own mythos, and now you got to cast him as an actor and write dialogue for him and stuff like that. But this in Valkyrie, every time you see Hitler, and I'm saying he's not lawful evil. Every time you see him, everyone around him is fucking terrified that they're going to say the wrong thing, get sent off to the gas can, that they're going to do something, they're going to somehow misstep, and this crazy, mad tyrant is going to capriciously kill them. That's not a lawful evil character. A lawful evil character has rules, right? And those rules might be twisted and evil, but if you follow those rules, you will get promoted. Lawful evil characters often have lieutenants under them that have worked their way up because they played the system, right? So yeah, I think that's my interpretation of lawful evil. Is it somebody who lawful evil is the best evil?
Evil.
If you had to pick one, yeah.
The best
The
evil.
best
It's
of
the
all
evil
evils.
that you can actually play in a game. Because even though I'm in this party with you people, I'm in it for myself. Right? I'm in it for myself, and I will screw you guys if I get a chance. But I have my own code. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, and you can kind of count on me to follow the rules, right? So that's, if you're going to play an evil character, the one you can kind of get away with is a lawful evil character, right? So that's it's my favorite of the evils.
Yes.
You know, it's funny that you touched on a little bit with the Hitler thing. That's something that's been a point of contention in our previous alignment debates, which is the fact that chaotic and other types of evil characters often take law systems. You know, they use that to their advantage. So we sometimes think, oh well, look at. I think Tyler Durden we were looking at for chaotic neutral. We're like, well, he set up these rules for Fight Club. Look how lawful he is. Well, it's like, well, no, he benefits from the rules and everyone else follows the rules, but he doesn't. So
yeah, I think that one of the discussions that came up on YouTube was that people would say, well, a character that has a personal code is lawful. And I'm like, that is certainly the popular perception. So if that works for you, use it. But in my experience, almost all characters have some kind of personal code. Like even chaotic, like even Han Solo. That dude is obviously a chaotic character, but he often talks about how he's in it for himself, right? I never risk my neck for anybody. He's got a list of things he doesn't do, right? And I think a lot of characters just in general have they don't just roll a random die to find out what they're going to do next. They have their list of things that they're not willing to do that they always do. So the whole personal code thing to me doesn't. I think a lot of characters have that, even chaotic characters.
Man,
I think I could be wrong.
I'm gonna have to rethink my whole worldview after that.
Well, like I think of Rick, I don't know if you guys have seen Casablanca, but Rick in Casablanca, one of the great characters in all of film.
Oh, yeah.
He literally he is very not interested in law at all. He has gone as far away as he can get. He's in Tatooine, basically, right? He's in Mos Eisley's cantina in the middle of Africa, and he has set up his own little thing here. And he is a chaotic character, right? In the sense that he does not believe in the rules or systems, but he definitely has his own code. That code is just selfish. So yeah, I think you can have a chaotic character that has a code. I think it's more about, do you believe that there should be outside your own head? Do you think that like that there should be a system and how it should run? Like Darth Vader doesn't just make shit up as he goes. He believes in law, right?
Yeah.
And he doesn't change the rules to suit. He's like, no, this is the way the Empire runs, man. Although that being said, he does kind of like his method of promoting people is kind of right?
Yeah, that's interesting. So it's
Aggressive
almost
expansion.
It's almost like the fact that you have a code isn't relevant so much as what alignment does that code fit.
And I think it's like a lot of alignment stuff is about what happens outside your head.
Right. Yeah.
Like I've got my things. I would never do this. I would never do this. I would never. Like a chaotic person might have a rule like I never trust anybody. Right. That's a rule.
Yeah.
Does that make them a lawful character? I don't think so. Right.
Absolutely.
It's what happens outside your head. Like what do you think about the world around you? Right. Do you believe in the idea of order, that it's a good thing, that we need it, or do you like, no, I don't like it. I want to get away from it. I want to exploit it when possible. Like you don't see Darth Vader trying to like exploit the way the Emperor runs things for his own benefit. So yeah, I mean, we use Darth Vader as an example all the time. Let's come up with what's another great lawful evil character.
Well, all right. This is a great time to roll off because
Good
I've got
segue.
6 of them on a list.
Fantastic.
So let's see.
And
Darth Vader. I'm gonna re-roll
Re-roll
that.
that.
6 entries, Darth Vader.
I mean, roll them again.
Switch.
Okay. Predator.
Predator.
Oh, shit. Well, I mean, he's got his code, but
See,
it's
that's
kind
an
of a
interesting
fucked up
example. That
code.
dude definitely has a code. But do you get the impression that that character believes? Like, I don't know. Like, talk about it. What do you guys think?
Well, I tend to say yes that it kind of tends towards a lawful bent, just because it's kind of based on a real world hunter's code, which tends to be, if you're going to kill an animal, you go for a humane kill, you put it down quickly,
Right.
and that ties in sort of with we see in Predator 2. I'm very steeped in Predator nerd lore, but he doesn't go after the woman
cop.
who played Vasquez because she's pregnant. He sees that and he says, okay, that's against the rules. So you can see that kind of, even though he didn't come up with this code, obviously it's a cultural thing, those rules are put in place almost the same way you would have wildlife management rules where, okay, you can't go after these deer out of season and all that stuff.
I also don't know. You are very excited to talk.
Yeah.
Well, because I haven't thought about this before, and the Predator is a really good example, but you said a couple things that made me think. I'm playing devil's advocate.
Yeah,
Sure.
go
I
for it.
don't know what I actually think about the Predator. Because we don't get to see much of his civilization outside the hunt. Right? So we don't know much about but I think, like, if you told me that these guys were based on, like, the Navajo, I would believe that, right? We see these guys; they count coup, right? They hunt. They value a man coming of age by hunting and killing something, right? So if you told me these guys were like the Navajo, I would be like, yeah, that makes sense to me. But the Navajo, like, you can read what the soldiers in the U.S. Army thought when they first encountered the Navajo, and they wrote very articulately about what these guys were like, and they thought these guys had this, like, utopian society, and it had nothing to do with law or government or order. It was just, if we had to make it, it would not surprise me if the Predators work this way. When they need to make a decision, all the elders and all the people that give a shit get together, they talk about it, and that's the decision. And if you don't, and if you're dumb, they don't listen to you. And there isn't the idea of, well, we have to listen to that guy because he's got the talking stick. No, it's all a pure meritocracy. So, and that to me is a chaotic culture. That is a culture that does not want. They don't like it when the white folks come along and say, no, you need to pay taxes, and you need to. There's a president. They're like, what are you talking about? So, I mean, I think I could argue that the Predators are fundamentally chaotic. They have a personal code. This gets back to what I was talking about before. They have this hunter's code, right? But I don't think, and this gets to, is law versus chaos, is it psychological or is it cultural? And I think you guys know where I stand.
Yeah, well, they obviously don't care about the law of the land, do they? I mean, they show up and just start murking people.
But they only murk people who are armed. It's effectively
Yeah.
people who could fight back.
Right, like they have their own hunter's code.
Right,
and
but
they stick to that code. But isn't that? I think that is what. Didn't I say earlier that, like, the lawful evil is the best kind of evil? Like, you could have a predator on your team, and he's like, I am hunting that guy. So the fact that you guys are all good guys and are going after him because he's the villain, that's an interesting coincidence. I don't particularly care. I'm not a good person, but you can trust me. You can trust that I will do what I say I'm going to do. I am going to hunt that guy down and kill him. That's a lawful evil character.
Yeah.
And the rest of the party could be chaotic good and lawful good, and they'd be like, okay, well, we can work with this guy, right? We can be in a party together, even though we don't trust each other. Even though we're all wondering what's going to happen when the predator finally kills that guy. Is he going to turn on us? He might. He didn't say anything about what he's going to do after he's killed the guy. But until that happens, we know, even though he's evil, we can rely on him. So that's a lawful evil character, I think.
The whole code thing makes me rethink everything.
Well,
It's something that people talk about a lot. They say, "Oh, he has a personal code." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, but a lot of people have personal codes. That doesn't make them lawful."
But it's a weird thing to take a personal code that you then echo on top of somebody else by saying, "Okay, I won't attack you without your weapon, but you pick one up, yeah, I'm going to take you out." It's
Right.
like I'm applying my code logic to your world.
I'm forcing you to live by my code logic. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, if you watch The Dark Knight, dude, Joker has a code and he explains it to Harvey Dent. He's like, "This is the thing I live by," right? And he's got his own ethos, and everything he does is consistent with that ethos. So I think that the notion of chaos, like a personal code being a sign of a lawful character, I think that can be true, but I also think it can be a red herring.
Yeah, I agree. Man, that Predator, at this point, I'm on the fence a little bit because there's such a strong argument for both.
Yeah.
I just feel like I would want to know the cult. What are they called? Yanti?
Yeah.
Yow-
It's
something like-
that's
The
sounds too
Forgotten
much like
Realms snake
Yowie.
dudes?
No, that it's
Oh yeah.
if you read the Predator novels, there's this name for him. It's
Yeah.
very tedious.
Well, whatever their
Of
culture
course,
is.
well, look, man. At some point, if you tell a Predator story from a Predator's point of view,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because somebody's got to think. These guys don't call themselves Predator, do they?
Yeah.
That's true.
That's Bob.
Yeah, exactly. That's Alan. I've known Alan my whole life.
He's a cool cat.
What's that, Predator?
Got a cool skull collection. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would go Lawful Evil either, but I would think they'd probably sit closer to chaotic neutral.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, like, I think that they're like they definitely don't give a shit about your society. Right?
No,
They
no.
don't care about like whatever rules you guys have around here. We do not care. We are here to hunt.
Yeah.
And in the context of that, yeah, we have our own system, right? But and they're good to their word. Like the Predators don't torture people, right? And that's one of the things I think we like about them. That's one of the things we admire about them. That's what makes them good bad guys. I think good bad guys need to have some kind of consistent behavior because that lets us hang our hat on them as characters. We know what they're going to do. We look forward to what they're going to do. So yeah, who knows? This alignment thing. It's crazy.
It's a tough one. Well, and also we brought up in the past how it, where you stand depends on where you sit as far as alignment. Where it's kind of, if I'm looking at it from my perspective as I'm the subject of this discussion, I think I'm something completely different than someone outside of me does. So if
Oh, sure.
if a
definitely
victim
Lawful
of the
Evil.
Predator,
You judge yourself based on your thoughts and ideals. Other people judge you based on your actions.
Yeah.
'Cause they don't know what's going on in your head.
so I
Exactly.
mean, it's easy to see how the woman who is talking about the Predator in the movie describes him as the devil. He's
Right.
obviously chaotic evil to her.
To her, yeah, exactly, yeah. Because from her point of view, it's just random, right?
Yeah.
Unlike she doesn't have the rescue team's point of view. They are figuring out that this predator behaves a certain way and can be relied upon to do certain things, and they want to try and find a way to exploit that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Predator is such a good movie. I love that.
Oh
movie.
yeah.
Yeah, I just
It
was
is so
watching
good.
on Saturday.
Come on.
Yeah, I
And
can't.
Shane Black, the guy who wrote that movie, is directing the new one.
Yeah, just released
There's
the
a
first
new one. How
Yeah.
do I not know about this?
and he just released a sneak peek of the Predator that you can check out.
All right, I'll be
Yeah, I
right
mean,
back,
Well,
Shane,
guys.
Shane
we
Black,
still
by the
like
way,
that.
is one of the best writers Hollywood has ever had. And he's got a new movie coming out Friday called The Nice Guys. He did
Oh,
a
I didn't
great-
know that was him. Oh, nice.
Yep, that's him. He wrote and directed that, I believe. And he wrote and directed a movie called Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Oh yeah,
I
And-
love that movie.
If you like Iron Man, the reason you like Iron Man is because of a movie called Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did Iron
maybe
Man
I
3.
should redeem those WB tickets for Nice Guys that got emailed to me. I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't realize the screenings.
I mean, it looks like it's going to be cool. I'm
Yeah,
going to see it.
yeah,
I'm going to
that'd
see
be
it.
cool.
Awesome.
Well, you guys want to do one more?
Well,
Yeah.
Why
I
don't
thought
we
the
go
Predator
around?
discussion was really interesting.
Or should we
Do
do,
you want
our
to go?
choices?
Because after we discuss one of these sample characters, we usually come up with a character we think is of that alignment
Yeah.
and discuss those
Right,
and
well,
whether
look-
or not they are. So
Yeah. All right. Well, let's just jump into that. John, kick it off.
Okay, I said it earlier on chat, and I'm gonna keep saying it. We talked about it before, and I'm gonna
Okay.
keep bringing him up. And I know he's definitely on those alignment charts, but I'm going Doctor Doom.
Oh, yeah, Doctor Doom is definitely Lawful Evil, right?
Yeah, I don't. He knows there's a law and order that needs to be kept. He just wants to be at the very top of it and
Yeah.
be in control of it because he knows what's best for us.
Right, like you can send diplomats and ambassadors to his country.
Exactly.
They're not just going to get. They're not going to get boiled alive, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't just believe in his system. He believes in the system,
Mm-hmm.
right? He just wants to be. He thinks there should be nations. He just wants his own, and he wants to run it.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
he's the perfect lawful evil guy because he'll like you said, like you mentioned earlier, if he says he'll do something, he will do
do
it. But
Yeah,
it
I
will
think that's the classic acid test. Is yeah, right.
exactly. I was just gonna say because he knows that it will benefit him. However, at the end of the day, because my favorite quote of his is like, "There must always be doom." You know.
Like I think that. And it's also telling. I think that there have been lots of adventures where he has had to team up with Reed Richards, and they've had to work together, right, to fight some other greater evil. Because even though he's the bad guy, and even though he is cruel, right, which is one of the hallmarks of being evil,
Yep.
and even though he is tyrannical and he's not interested in freedom, right, he doesn't want his subjects to be able to vote. That's ridiculous. Which is something else that we, at least in the West, consider to be evil. He is someone that you can work with. Right, and so there are lots of great team-up examples of how Doom is kind of on the hero side for a little while, and everyone's like, okay, it's nice to have this guy on our side because he's powerful and he's smart, but what happens when he gets what he wants? Then all bets are off.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can't disagree with it. That one's so spot on, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned it before, I think, when we were talking about chaotic evil.
No, it was on a chart for neutral evil.
Oh, what?
we
That's not
disagree
right.
No way.
with that, yeah.
That
that's
dude
not-
is not neutral. That dude doesn't. Neutral is either I don't have an opinion or I think there shouldn't be either. Doom does not believe in chaos. He hates chaos. Right? He wants order.
Yeah, I mean, hell, he created a machine to go save his mother who was in hell.
Well, bless his heart.
Yeah, I mean, he wanted to get her out of there. So
Nice
there you
guy.
go.
I can't say I blame him.
Cute little Dr.
Well,
Doom.
that's kind of one of the fun things about a lawful evil character is even though they're this villain, they've got this two-edged sword of their lawful nature, which can benefit them or can be used against them. Like like Matt mentioned with the Predator, once you figure out those kind of patterns and you can kind of use that against them. So that makes it a fun little puzzle of a character.
Yeah.
All right, Brett.
Well,
what
let's
do you
keep
got?
going around. Yeah. Brett.
Well, I'm hoping mine. You guys are probably going to shoot it all down, but I was thinking.
I'm just waiting.
We're ready. Got my
ready.
guns.
You guys usually do. I was going with Lord Cutler Beckett from Pirates of the Caribbean 2 and 3, I believe.
I think I saw both those movies, but I do not remember who we're talking about.
He's the pirate hunter, right?
Yeah, he was like the short, snotty dude that was running the East India Trading Company.
Okay.
He was really the main antagonist in those movies, but because he didn't have tentacles coming out of his face or was undead,
remembers him.
nobody remembers him. But he was, I mean, it was all about establishing the East India Trading Company. He worked with, he would get writs to, exact his power upon different ports and would have people arrested because of the letter of the law, not because it was right or wrong, but because it served his own reasons. The beginning of Pirates of the Caribbean 2, he's having Will and
Kira.
Keira Knightley. It's been a while.
dare
He
you.
has them arrested, even though they're arrested for freeing a pirate, but it was for all the right reasons that they did it, and so he has them arrested, and the whole reason he's doing all this is so that he can get the compass that Jack Sparrow has. So he's definitely using the law for his own gains and acts mostly within it. I mean, he has Mercer and
What's this character's name? I'm looking up on IMDb to try to remember him.
Cutler Beckett. So yeah, if you go to IMDb,
Oh, there he
Caribbean
is.
2.
Yeah, Tom Hollander.
Yeah.
Oh, this guy.
Yeah.
and he's going out. He wants to marry. Isn't he? Wait. No, he's not the guy from the first movie.
No.
I remember this guy.
Yeah, that was.
Oh, this guy's such a bad dude.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Doesn't have that great scene
So
where like
good.
the whole ship is exploding.
Oh,
around
yeah.
him and he's walking
he
down.
realizes that he's dead, and he has no idea what to do. I don't think he picks up a single weapon through the entire thing.
Right.
It's the
his
hallmark
weapon,
of a true bad guy.
Yeah, his weapon is.
He's the one
his
who's kind of trying to
mouth.
manipulate and control Davy Jones. And
Yeah,
that kind of
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, he's a scheming, evil, bad dude. Yeah.
Yeah, real.
Well,
You know what's funny about that character, though, and it touches on one of my favorite concepts, which is using a lawful, and this could be any character, as far as good, evil, neutral, but using a lawful nature to make someone who wouldn't normally be considered a bad guy, right? Like, so he's a pirate hunter. You would think that that's probably a pretty good dude, right?
Oh, sure, right. But the Pirates are the good guys in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you get this character who could just as easily be like a lawful good paladin or
Sure,
something,
yeah.
but he's pursuing the characters because they're deviants. And now you've got this interesting conundrum where, okay, do you want to kill the main bad guy of the campaign? Because you're actually killing someone who's trying to do the right thing. So, I mean, obviously this guy's a dickhead, so that's not the case. But
But we can certainly imagine a kind of Horatio Hornblower style story where that guy is one of the good guys.
Yeah.
And all the same things are happening, but just from a different point of view. And so suddenly, because there's lots of fiction where the pirates were the bad guys.
Yeah.
And so being a pirate hunter would make you one of the good guys.
Yeah, in order to get what he wants, which is to destroy all the pirates, he needs that compass. So he's like, I must vanquish these evil pirates, so I need this thing. And everyone's like, yeah, go get the thing. And he's like,
Yeah.
I've captured Davy Jones. I make him do my bidding. Everyone's like, dude, that guy's awesome, But
he's got tentacles for face. What could go wrong?
Yeah. He's played by Bill Nye. He's one of my favorite
yeah,
actors.
oh yeah.
well, I thought I had a good choice, and now I'm second guessing it.
Look what
But
you've done to us, Matt.
I know.
Sorry.
I was thinking Two-Face from Batman.
See, now I think Two-Face, I understand why you would say Two-Face, right? Because, again, that guy has a code, right? He's going to flip the coin. He's going to decide, he's going to let the coin decide, and he always does that. He can be relied upon to do that. But that dude just
I know, but you converted me. Like, you've changed my whole mindset.
That guy is super chaotic. Actually, the fact that he is willing to leave things to chance is because of chaos.
Yeah.
It's because I do not want law. I do not want rules. I do have my own personal. I have a shtick, right? Is it a code? I don't know. It's more of a shtick, right? And he's going to flip this coin, and but he always. I mean, I think there are actually instances that we've seen in the comic. Of course, they've been written by so many people where like the coin says heads, and he does what he wants anyway.
Yeah.
But typically, yeah, he's portrayed as somebody who will, if it comes up one way, he does what the coin says, right?
Aren't there versions as well where he has one double-sided coin that's like heads on both sides?
Yeah. That is his coin.
Oh, but one side's all
scratched up. So that was the bad side, and the good side was the clean head.
Well, because originally it was a double-sided coin, and he wasn't insane.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So then he had to scratch one side. That's so crazy. That tells you a lot about this dude, right? You know, you could just get with a normal coin that has two different sides, and he's like, no, man, I need to fuck with my old coin that I've always had.
Yeah,
that's what makes me who I am.
Yeah, this is it. I saw that because I took a look. I was like, okay, let me check what the internet says as far as Lawful Evil went. And I saw Two-Face in there. I was like, nope. That dude's nuttier than shit.
He's so chaotic.
Two-Face is super chaotic.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's so chaotic. I almost want to say he's lawful chaotic.
Chaotic. He has a rule, right? He has a rule that he abides by. But I don't think that having a personal code makes you a lawful character. I just think that makes you a character.
Now, if the coin comes up basically on the lawful side, is this coin basically just changing his alignment every time it flips? I mean, it's chaotic in nature, but if it flips and it's
the point is determining: do I do the good thing or the evil thing?
Yeah.
So the fact that he relies on the coin and does what the coin says makes him chaotic.
Yeah.
Because that's chaos.
He's leaving.
That shit.
Sorry, bro.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I didn't even want to say it. It was what I was thinking at first, and I was like, well, this is not it right.
But it was a good discussion, right?
It was such good talk.
All these examples are like,
I know.
All of a sudden we have something to talk about.
You'll do it one day.
James.
Don't
It's
worry.
true. No, it's true because
I had Kung Fury.
John's was so
Yeah.
spot on
Yeah,
that we
yours
didn't
was-
talk about it.
No, that was still close.
All right, so mine and I love being able to do this because I get to work in my favorite characters from random things.
Of course.
And with this one, I'm going General Kale from Willow because he is the classic Darth Vader from from New Hope, where he's just, I mean, almost the attack dog, but he's always enforcing order and Bavmorda's will. So I don't know. I hope this one isn't too boring.
What does he say? Does it kill?
Find the child, or no, kill the beast. Find the baby.
Kill the beast.
He doesn't talk
Find
much.
the baby.
He's got a few words.
Yeah.
He's
now
a man
you
of,
die.
He's a man of action.
Yes.
It's true, and his sword is so scary.
You still need to do that costume. Sorry, getting off subject,
Yeah.
but yeah, you would make an amazing General Kale.
I
That
think
guy's
so.
that movie's awesome. By the way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Can't find it.
I think the great sin of that film is Willow. Like, if that movie had been about Val Kilmer, there would have been 10 more movies.
Oh yeah,
Like, Van Mardigan is such a great character.
yeah. He was my example for chaotic neutral. But
Mad Mardigan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Help! There's a peck here with an acorn.
yeah.
My favorite lines of dialogue.
Ever after our campaigns have been, Peck is the go-to derogatory term for short races, which for better or for worse.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone looks at Ovalt. Yeah,
I have a good friend of mine who keeps the memory of that movie alive because every time we look something up in something and don't get the answer we want, like we go to Google or whatever and we can't find it, he'll just say, "The bones tell me nothing."
Oh man, see, that's how you tell the cool people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I won't take General Kale away from you.
Yeah,
I think Lawful Evil
absolutely.
works.
Yeah, that guy believes in law and just wants to be on top. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for
Skull
alignment
Mask.
debate, Predator was wrong.
Bum, 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 bum.
Another alignment meme chart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Fall into the graveyard.
that
Our
one's-
heart was in the right place. But
Well, man,
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
still.
obviously, like I said, I think that like it's clear why people think that.
Yeah.
And if that works for you, go for it, man. That I get it, but I definitely think that the Predators have this kind of the archetype. Okay, the Predators' cultural archetype is the noble savage, right? And that's why I used the example of the Navajo or just any Indian tribe. Like those guys do not believe in the rule of law; they believe in figuring everything out as you go. Right?
Oh, I'm
And
so sorry, man. I just realized I didn't give you a chance to pick someone.
Oh, should I pick somebody?
Yeah, go for
Yeah,
it.
if you'd like.
Lawful Evil, and not Darth Vader, right? Because we were
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
Don Vito Corleone.
I don't
yeah.
know what that is.
Yeah.
What is that one?
Oh, Godfather.
Good
Yeah.
lord.
Oh.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Wow.
I didn't.
You're killing me over here.
Godfather is not my thing.
Did you call him the grandfather?
I said Godfather is not my
Vito
thing.
Corleone is the head of a mob family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And he doesn't just believe in the rule of law. He's a bad guy. He is first of all, he thinks we need stuff like senators and governments because his whole operation relies on paying these guys off. He never talks about, what we should do? We should overthrow the government. He never does that. He
Yeah.
wants to use the government and exploit it, and he has recreated his own kind of evil, not we're talking about evil versus good, his own evil version of the family, the government within the mob, right?
Yeah.
So it has order and there are rules, and he's at the top of it. And I think people who watch The Godfather, because Francis Ford Coppola did such a good job with that movie, people do not realize that we're not supposed to root for these guys. They're evil, but they're so likable, right? They're so likable that we want them to win, that we think of them as heroes. But Coppola's point is, no, these are bad guys. And that's the insidious nature of evil, is that these guys, even though they care about family, and they talk about family and loyalty and trust, and we think those are the same virtues that I have, therefore these are good people. No, they murder people all the time. They're awful. They're terrible. They extort, right? They peddle drugs. They do all sorts of terrible stuff.
Yeah.
But they definitely have their own structure. So I say, any mob boss. Pick your favorite mob boss.
Tony
Is
Soprano.
a lawful
How
evil
about that?
character. Tony Soprano.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's spot on, man.
Yeah. Hadn't even thought about the mob, but yeah. That makes a lot
I'm
of
gonna
sense.
agree because it sounds right.
Oh shit.
Jesus Christ.
Like people in the comments of my YouTube video were talking about, when I said law, they thought I meant the laws. Like
Right,
the actual
yeah.
laws on the book. And I'm like, no, the actual laws on the book are not the point. The point is that there should be a book, right? What the book says is not that big a deal. That changes from year to year and city to state and stuff like that. But a lawful character believes there should be a structure to society, and that there should be a hierarchy and stuff like that.
Yeah, and work within it.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
A chaotic character often thinks, no, that's fine. I just don't want to have anything to do with it, right?
Yeah, or that's great for you guys that you're hamstrung by that thing called law, and now watch this.
There are lots of chaotic bad guys that don't want to overthrow anything. They just want to be like, they think it's a bad idea and they want to stay away from it.
Sure. Well, I think we've got Lawful Evil down pretty good.
Yeah. I think so.
It's one of the easy ones, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the
Thank
fun
God.
ones. It's the just because I've always been such a fan of the Dark Knight type of a character,
Yeah.
the Lord Soths and things like
Overlords.
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it's
Overlords.
resonated with me a little bit. I don't know. I enjoy it, so I'm glad we got to do that one.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Matt, we were talking about earlier. This Reddit thread is huge.
Yeah, I mean, I deliberately avoided answering everybody's questions. I only would answer a question if I thought this probably isn't going to come up in the podcast.
Sure.
But it's already like 10 o'clock, and so I think I may end up doing like my own video. Like any questions those people asked that we didn't cover here, I may just do in my own video.
Yeah, I mean, we can. We went through them and picked out a couple of our favorites, and maybe we'll just ask you a couple here. But
Go for it.
yeah, you can. People should look out for maybe a video or just check the Reddit thread.
Maybe I'll do
you-
maybe I'll do an AMA or something like that. I was reluctant to do that before because I figured like if you want to know something, just ask a question in the YouTube comments. Like I answer a lot of questions.
Well, that's the thing. It's funny because you're obviously very popular on Reddit, and I know that you post there. But it's funny because I don't know that people maybe just don't know. You can just message users, but
Yeah.
it's funny because as soon as a thread with you pops up and you comment on something, all of a sudden everyone's asking questions. It's funny.
Yeah, well, I mean, the good news is like people. If you're listening to this, people shouldn't message me, right? Because I want
don't have
like
time.
think about what you're doing when you message me. You are asking a question that you're probably not the only person who wants to know the answer to.
That's true. Yeah.
So there's probably lots of people. If everyone did what you were doing, I'd be getting 1 million fucking private messages, which I am. Right? But if you ask that same question in a thread, then everyone sees the answer, and that way, like, the system works. So I get a lot of people asking me stuff, and I'm like, or people asking me for like super noodly specific advice about handle problems in their campaign and stuff.
Right.
And I'm like, you're asking me on Reddit. Go ask Reddit.
Right?
There's
Yeah.
thousands of D&D players that have their advice is just as good as mine.
Yeah.
But I think because of the videos, people feel this personal connection, which is cool. But like I'm a big advocate of Reddit. I think Reddit is fantastic. I don't think people should be shy. If you got a question, just go to Reddit and say, hey, would you guys handle this? And you'll get good answers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because there will be a lot of the time when I'll see a question on Reddit and I'll want to jump in and be like, oh, I've got a great answer for this. And then, I mean, if you don't jump straight on it, there's so many talented
3 or
people
4,
that have great answers, and it's rare where I feel the need to even chime in.
Correct. Yeah, because and the system, their algorithms are great. The best answers get upvoted.
Yeah.
Right? So you rarely have to go that far into a thread before you find something that is good.
Yeah.
So
Well,
questions, go shoot.
Yeah, I'm going to just do a couple, and then we'll let you wrap up, and
Yep.
we'll decide
Awesome.
how to go about these. I really liked this one from Resnick. Do events or characters from your games find a way into your novels?
Oh, by the way, pick those up today.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
excited to
actually.
read 'em. I
Yeah, I'm
think my
really
wife's at
excited.
home
I
reading
have
them right now.
Priest in my cart. I'm gonna buy. Which I'm sorry, this is kind of derailing from the question, but I would love to send to you, by the way, and have you sign it. That would be excellent.
Oh, that'd
So
be cool.
yeah, I mean the problem with that is that the print version is awful. Like the technology that they use to print, they print the book when you order it, right? And that's like the most expensive way to make a book.
Yeah.
Right, so it's the maximum cost. I see like $1 from one of those books, but also it's just a huge pain in the butt to update the print version. You have to jump through all these hoops.
That doesn't
right?
sound
Whereas
great. Yeah.
the Kindle version, I can literally just open up a Word document, find a typo. I can open up a Word document, fix the typo, save the Word document, upload it, and now anyone who buys. Just from Microsoft Word, I can do this. Whereas if you do it via CreateSpace, which is their print solution, you really have to go through a layout process where you bring the entire book into something like Orc Express and lay it out and then upload that, and it's a nightmare. So as a result, I don't think Priest has been updated in like 4 years. Like this. I moved chapters around and stuff since then. Right? So like, so
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll send you a postage prepaid. You can
I'll sign
sign
the
a
Kindle.
post-it. Send it to me, and whenever I pull it up on the Kindle version, I'll just slap it on the back of my iPad.
You should
and-
just send them the Kindle.
All you're doing is you're reminding me that I need to update the print version. people buy the print version, and I feel bad for them because the Kindle version is much much better. But I'm also planning on I wrote that book 4 or 5 years ago, and at this stage in my writing career, I look at it as somewhat overwritten. So I currently have a plan where I went through all the different chapters and counted how many words there were, and I have a plan on how to edit it and bring it more in line with my more modern writing. Make it shorter and punchier.
Well, we're excited to read it. I know you said you just bought them too, right? Brett?
Just
Yeah.
forgive. I'm an independent author, right? So it has not been through the normal editorial process. So you may find a word here or there that wasn't spelled right.
Oh, that's it.
I got
That's it. I need to refund that.
99.99% correct, which still means there's a
James
bunch
would
of
catch them. James would catch them.
Dr. Whom over here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you know what? I much prefer a product that's not made by committee, so I
Yeah.
think it's a fair trade.
Yeah, true.
But
hopefully-
back
hopefully
to
that's
Resnick's question: do events or
Right,
characters from your games find a way into your novels?
Yeah, but that's mostly a coincidence. Does that mean? When I decided I wanted to be a writer, I was taking. I was. There was a point in my life where I was working on video games and tired of writing for other people. I think a lot of screenwriters go through this, where they decide, screw it, I want to write for myself, and the easiest way to do that is write a novel. And I was like, what am I going to write? Fantasy or science fiction? These were the things I felt like I knew, and I picked fantasy for a couple of reasons. And once I picked fantasy, I'm like, okay, well, I had an idea for a story and a character. I needed a setting. And I didn't really care what that setting was because it's not about the setting. And that's the thing about my novels is it's not Lord of the Rings. It's not A Song of Ice and Fire. It's not about the heraldry it's not about the recipe of the food on the table. It's about these characters coming into conflict, right? And so I didn't really care what the setting was. So I'm like, screw it, I'll just use my D&D setting.
Yeah.
So it is easy to mistake the fact that I mined this D&D setting for names and places and stuff like that, but it is nothing in the book is about that. So there's an order of knights in the first book. The first book is about a knight is murdered, and the main character is sent to solve the murder, find out who did it, find out why they did it, and bring them to justice. And the order of knights is an order of knights from my D&D campaign, but only because I needed an order of knights.
Right.
I didn't start with these guys in my D&D game and thinking about what kind of story to tell. I knew I wanted to tell a story about knights, and I'm like, these guys will do. So
Right.
yeah, they do appear. The stuff from my game names. I pillage names all the time. Some of my players come up with great names, and so just kind of because it saves me work, I will use my friend Dave's name for his character. But otherwise, the story has to live or die on its own merits. None of the stuff I write in my novels is about my D&D game.
Sure.
Gotcha. Cool.
RJ3, that's me. I freaking love this guy's username, by the way. He also, by the way, he wanted me to personally make sure to say that he thinks your vids are great, and he's a proud subscriber. So, yay! He had a pretty good question. I condensed it a little bit. What is your favorite monster and least favorite monster from the new Monster Manual?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I don't know I don't think there are any new monsters in the 5th edition Monster Manual. I think they're all monsters from other stuff. So I
can't think of any new ones either.
I think if you watch my videos, you're not going to be surprised to hear me say that I love the Slod.
Yeah.
I love these fucking intelligent toad demons from this other dimension, and they're kind of color coded, so the players know it's like, oh god, it's an orange one. That's the worst, right? And they have this great hierarchy, and they have the spellcasters and the big strong ones. And the thing I love about the Slod is they're from another universe, but they imply a lot. Like, they imply that they have a civilization. They imply that they have their own kind of logic to their world. And so I love busting those guys out. I will use them early, meaning a party that's not high enough level to fight Slod will fight Slod in my game just because I'm like, you guys might not make it to 9th level, right? And I want to use these guys. So, do I have a least favorite monster? I don't know. What would a least favorite monster be? I don't know.
Maybe think of it as a player. Because if I had to pick, it would be Rust Monster.
Yeah, Rust Monster, hands down.
Rust Monster, I guess.
But that is as a player.
As a player, I absolutely hate the Rust Monster.
I mean, I
Rust Monster.
Yeah.
I don't know
those guys.
what would make me go, oh, I hate, like, I sort of feel like as a player, the more I hate something, the more I love it.
Yeah, it's...
Right, like, oh, not these guys, I hate these guys. But what I really mean is,
Creatures you
these
love to
guys are
hate.
great.
I don't know.
But
I pretty much hate mimics. Pretty bad.
One
maybe
bad
it's just the
experience.
DM in me. It may just be that I'm such an inveterate DM that it's hard for me to dislike a monster. I mean, I think gnomes are dumb. How about
Oh.
why would you put gnomes in a game with halflings? It's like we have halflings and these other things.
Yeah, they're
that
kind of
are,
redundant,
like,
aren't
a lot
they?
like halflings. Oh no, they're super important. The difference between these little tiny guys and these other little tiny guys. I'm like,
Matt, you've made me so happy
like,
tonight.
I don't think of gnomes as bad guys. I think of them as PCs. But I mean, we can do without them, right?
Hey, you know,
Easily.
that's interesting because in that space D&D setting I made, it was just halflings. There were no gnomes, and nobody cared.
Yeah.
Nobody
That's one of
cares.
those things where I mean, I'm being funny, but I'm also being serious. I mean, unfortunately, when I play D&D, when I run D&D, I've got to, like, if a player reads the player's handbook and goes, I want to be one of those guys, I feel like it's my responsibility as a DM to make sure they're in my world somewhere.
Yeah.
And so there are gnomes in my setting, but only because players expect it. Otherwise, I really feel like you can just do it with you already have halflings and dwarves, right? So it's like, come on, God.
Well, that part was it was one of those things, since I actually wrote it with Savage Worlds in mind, it was one of those things where they had half folk, they didn't differentiate, so I didn't force the issue. But again, nobody cried about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry, Brad.
I didn't really choose gnome specifically
It chose
because
you.
I love
me.
gnomes. Yeah. I wish I could quit you, gnome. Yeah, I mean, but basically, I was looking at the player's handbook, and I never played a halfling. I'd never played.
Yeah, you're always like huge orc fighters. And,
Yeah.
You know.
I played a dwarf once, but I'd never really done a lot of the
not talk
shorter
about
races. But so yeah, I saw the gnomes. I was like, I'll give that a go. I wasn't. But,
No, and to be fair, it's super entertaining characters. So
Yeah, I don't know. I think if Matt listened to some of our games, maybe it might turn him around a little bit.
no.
Well, I guess
I'm
what
scared.
I would do is I would say, okay, now why do we have halflings?
Yeah. Well, and I'll say this.
We could lose one of them.
I mean, Oval could easily be a halfling too. Like,
No, he couldn't. No,
Yeah, he could.
he's a gnome. No,
Well,
I don't know.
He eat enough.
He's
What's
not.
that?
He
He's
doesn't
not a
eat
little
enough
hobbit.
to be a
true.
halfling.
Yeah. And he wears shoes.
He needs 11sies and luncheon.
I don't know. We got one in from Twitter from one of our favorite fans, Darth Kevin. And it's funny. I was chatting with him on here, and I was like, "Oh, hey, we're gonna talk to Matt. You have any questions?" And he sent me like 9 questions, and then he's like, "I got a little overboard." I'm like, "Yeah, I'll pick one." But he also wanted me to express that he is a huge fan of the channel so far. So he's liking it. The question I'm going to pick from his is, do you have any tips for quickly converting older adventures to 5th edition?
I have done it a couple times now, and my advice is don't worry about it. If you watch my last video, I used a glyph of warding and I rolled like 64 or something, and someone's like, "Dude, that's not how glyph of warding works." It's like, yeah, my players don't know that though, right? And I didn't remember, and why can't there be more than one type of glyph of warding?
Yeah.
Right. So I don't sweat that. What I do is I look and I say, okay, there are I'm running Night Below, which is the 2nd edition adventure, and because there's a lot of stuff in AD&D in 2nd edition where they're like, okay, as the players move through this tunnel, there's a 50% chance a piercer will fall on them. And it just says that, right? And it's like, but that's not how modern D&D works, right? Where there's just a random chance that something awful is going to happen to you, right? But I find ways to use that. I still use a lot of that stuff. I just take the spirit of it and use. I don't worry about conversion, as in conversion implies some sort of mathematical equivalency, right? And I don't think we should imagine that there is one. If this encounter uses orcs in this old adventure, use orcs.
Yeah.
Right? Just don't use as many, or maybe use more, or maybe use an orc chieftain, and just follow the theme of the adventure. And I like a lot of that old school, there's a 5% chance the players will notice this. Well, wait a minute. What does that mean? Do you mean that it's a perception check with a DC of 20? No, that's not what it says. What it says is there's a 5% chance the players will notice this. I don't try to convert it. I just roll, or I have the players roll, and I just say there's a 5% chance you'll notice this. That, even though that logic belongs to an earlier edition of the game and doesn't really have a place in the rules of 5th edition, that doesn't mean the players won't understand it or won't think it's neat or won't think it's fun. So I just use it, and it turns out the players love it and they go with it.
Sure, that's a great
So,
answer. You mentioned something a little bit earlier back, saying that your players don't know what's going on, and it reminded me. We all kind of had a couple questions we wanted to get out for you specifically. But Brett, you're telling me your question for him, and that actually is pretty relevant. Why don't you get your question out for Matt? Because I'd like to know his input on this.
I've been watching your show quite a bit, and
Thank you.
and loving it. So one thing I was the butt I was thinking of.
But
I'm just digging myself in a hole here. So what I was thinking was, you were mentioning, I'm trying to remember this specific thing, in the Broken Spire Keep.
Broken Spire Keep from Night Below.
Sweet.
Which I think you can see a copy of Night Below behind me.
Yep.
It's that thing right there.
Oh, there. So, you had mentioned that at the end of one game they were stuck in this room, the orcs were outside, and that whole thing, and that you had gone into Photoshop and taken the secret room and moved it.
Yeah, that tells you a lot about me as a DM. I think.
So
I basically did a lot of work in case they called me out on something. I could then lie to them in a more elaborate manner and show them the map. But I didn't have to do that happily. But yeah, go ahead.
So you did that in case they called you out on it, and you moved the secret door, and that's all fine and good. But then you have a show talking about how you did that, and now they can see that you did that. Does that create conflict in your game, or trust issues, I should say, with your players?
It hasn't yet.
There you go.
I imagine
We've only been doing it for a couple months. I mean, what happened was there was a I don't know, I haven't had a problem yet, so all I can do is talk about the things I anticipate happening. I trust these guys. Not all of them watch my videos. Not all of them watch them when a lot of them, I think a lot of us, we will catch up, right? It'll be a couple weeks will go by, and then we'll watch 4 or 5 at once. Yeah. And the friends of mine that tend to watch the videos as soon as they go up tend to be the ones that I know better and trust. And I was talking to my friend TJ who plays Keck the Barbarian, and he said, dude, I feel like it didn't happen. Now, that he's new to this. He played D&D in the 80s. Now he's playing again for the first time in 30 years. He loves it. He's like, dude, we've been working with Matt Colville for 4 years and we're only playing D&D now? Like, he's like, this is crazy. Like, all that time we wasted, right? And so he's super into it, and I love that. He's one of the people I was running for, and now he's watching these videos and he's seeing behind the scenes. And he was talking today and he said, I feel like it's not real until you talk about it in the video.
Whoa.
He's like, I feel like once you put it in the video, I'm like, yeah, that's what happened. He goes, and I was there, right? And often that's not exactly what happened, but the way you tell the story makes it seem more real, and that gets to who we are as people. We are people. The thing that separates humans, I think, from everybody else is we tell stories of who we are to ourselves. We are a narrative species, and so yeah, he was seeing behind the scenes, and I asked him. I said, "But isn't it weird now that you saw that I cheated and I did this, that, and the other thing?" He goes, "Well, yeah, but only after the fact."
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that
Only
ignorance
happened-
is nice.
Yeah,
And
he's like, when I was playing, I didn't know any of this stuff, and then, so I only found out after the fact. That being said, I don't. Different players require different levels of verisimilitude. Somebody like TJ can watch the video after the fact, and it doesn't impact their ability to suspend their disbelief during the game. Other players can't do that, so they don't watch the videos.
yeah, that's fair. Because some players can't help but metagame a little bit, so I can
Right.
totally see that point of view.
If we were teenagers, and TJ talks about this all the time, man, like he's one of those players that when he was 15, it was like, oh, what are we fighting? A stone golem? Oh man, I gotta go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. Monster manual, right? He's like, we would do that all the time, and that was perceived as cheating. And I don't necessarily see it as cheating, but I certainly see it as against the spirit of the game.
Sure.
Right? It's for the players to just go look up the stats of the bad guys as they're fighting them. But he would never do that now as an adult because he has learned that reading the last chapter of the mystery first is not fun.
Yeah.
You can do it. You can do it, right? And sometimes you learn that by trying it. Like there's that time I did that one. That one time I opened my presents early, and I hated it because I had to pretend to my mom that I was surprised. It was awful, right? So I think that now that we're adults, the presence of the YouTube channel is like I have some friends of mine that are like, I usually watch the video like 3 or 4 months after we play, and I'm like, good. They police themselves. So is it a problem? No, but only because I think my players are adults and are mature, and they're each solving that problem their own way.
Yeah,
I
and
just
that-
lie better to my mom now that I'm an
geez.
adult.
I get to see them asking you, oh, well, let me really look at that map and looking for, where the S didn't quite line up. They're like, oh, he photoshopped that. I could tell now.
No, but I'll tell you that, one of the things I've gotten good at in the last 30 years is pacing. And I can kind of tell when the players are starting to, go, what the fuck is that? Did Matt just make that? And I'm like, da-da-da, look over here, right? And they don't notice. And so in the moment, I mentioned this in one of the videos, in the moment they believe. And that's because of my capacity to control the flow of the drama and increase drama whenever I see that the players are starting to question the reality of the world. And as a result, I kind of keep them off balance. They never get enough. They never get an opportunity to start thinking about thinking, right? They never get the chance to metagame because I kind of always make sure there's something for them to do.
Sure. Well, I know there's not too much time left because it's getting late, but John, James, do you guys have any questions for Matt?
Mine, and I apologize if you've answered this on another podcast, but I'm just curious, what was your first game of D&D like? Because for some players, it's this big momentous occasion. I know Brett doesn't even remember his. So
They're
I'm just
all
curious.
I
blended
definitely
together
remember
back then.
mine. Well, I mean, the first time I ever encountered Dungeons and Dragons, it was because there was. I'm going to talk really fast because this is a long story. The first time I ever encountered the game, there had been a Nightline special. Nightline was like ABC's version of 60 Minutes, and they did a thing about D&D because it was this thing all of a sudden in the very early 80s that people were talking about because it had this association with
The devil worship and all that
nonsense, right?
Yeah.
But my mom, who was an adult, she was a single mom, it was just me and her, she had come up, she was working, she had a real job, right, to support her child, but in college and high school, she was an actor. And so she heard this stuff and she's like, this sounds kind of like improvisational theater. It sounded interesting to her. She didn't want to play D&D. She wanted to be able to go to work the next day and talk about it. Everyone's going to be talking about this thing, right? So she wanted to be able to speak intelligently about it. While all her friends were like, oh, I watched this thing, and it was blah, blah, blah. My mom could say, no, that's not what it is. That's stupid. So she went to the bookstore and bought a copy of the Red Box and sat down to run D&D for me.
Nice.
And I had
Wow.
no idea what the hell was going on. I wasn't particularly interested. I was like 12 or 13. 12. I must have been 11 or 12 and that is not an age where you are super down with hanging out with your mom, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, whatever with this. What are we doing? And there was this piece of paper face down, and I looked at it and I lifted up, and she goes, no, and she slammed her hand down, and she goes, that. And I remember the non-repro blue, right, of those old school dungeons
Yeah.
where they printed in that special blue that makes it so you can't Xerox it. And she goes, no, that's the map of the dungeon. That's the thing you're going to explore. You can't look at that. That's cheating. And I was like, whatever, like that. And I looked at it. She's like, all right, fine, fuck you. And she took the whole thing and threw it away.
Oh.
And we never played. And that shows you a lot about what kind of little pissant kid I was, and also how hardcore my mom was. And so it wasn't until like I was 16 that I was hanging out with guys. We played like Axis and Allies. We played board games and war games, and they were like, "Oh, we should play D&D with us." And the only thing I really knew about D&D at that point was that there were roles. Right? People think that that fourth edition invented the roles, but I knew in 1986 that like you needed a fighter and a wizard and a cleric and a thief. And so I was like, "What do you guys need?" But it's funny. That's how I thought. Of course, I'm thinking I'm a communist. I'm thinking in terms of serving the greater good, right? And they're like, no, dude. This new Dragon magazine just came out with all these different paladins in it. You should play one of them. And I'm like, well, okay. I don't.
It's the new
whatever,
hotness.
Yeah, I was like, exactly. They already had established characters, and they were jealous that I was going to make a new one and get to use the new cool thing that they didn't get to use because they already had guys. And so I said, yeah, sure. And I rolled up a Lion Paladin, which was a lawful neutral paladin who got +1. You ready for this? +1 to hit and damage per level against chaotic creatures.
Whoa.
Wow.
And so, right, that's nonsense. And it was super overpowered, and a lot of the Dragon magazine content was kind of like deliberately overpowered because they wanted people to like it and use it. And
the Game
so
of
we got to
Workshop
be like
effect.
4th or 5th level, and the other players, I was a lawful paladin, and the other players were kind of being normal teenage players, and they started to really be afraid of me because they were all chaotic, and they knew
shit.
like Matt can literally just one-shot us right now, and it became we have to do something about Matt's character. So yeah, I also remember my very first game was a module called Castle Amber, which if you're not familiar with, holy crap, it is a thing called a funhouse dungeon. Which you should check out if you can find. And one of the players had already played. This is an important lesson to me. One of the players had already played through it before, and he knew with another DM, he knew that there was a set of +2 full plate in here. And we were looking for it, and I ended up off on my own with my buddy Jeff in the part of the dungeon, and we found this armor. We didn't know what it was. Dave hadn't told us, and it was made of gold. It was solid gold, so we thought it's worth money. So we didn't think of putting it on and using it as armor. We split it up and to sell it. And so, right, like we're like, whatever. I've
Like
already
any
got armor.
responsible player.
I want gold, right? And so when we show up with this armor, Dave, who knew what it was like, "Give that to me." And he demanded that we give up this armor or he would kill us. And that was my first experience with D&D.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah,
In spite of
so
that, I kept playing.
I have a new character I'm going to roll up. It's a Lion Paladin.
You too, huh?
Yeah, the
We could be
Paladins have
We're just
issued
all
a
gonna do
position
it.
of
We could be
106.
twins.
It was called the Plethora of Paladins, and regardless of
different
what you
alignment.
think of how crazy the abilities are, the fluff was amazing.
Yeah,
like
it
the
sounds
Lawful
cool.
Evil Paladin was called an Illrigger.
Whoa.
And I was like,
Ooh.
yeah, I want to be one of them.
Yeah, that sounds menacing.
Yeah, there's a
You
lot
can
of
have your
cool stuff
lion.
in it.
I'll have an Illrigger. That's cool.
Yeah, plus,
Yeah, Illriggers are cool. Anyway,
Well, it's
so
awesome,
that
man.
was my first. Those are my first kind of near miss with D&D, and then the first actual experience.
I wish my mom had tried to play D&D with us, but
You probably had a more successful experience than I did.
No, I
I
played.
could-
I was
Mom.
probably just as bad. But we ended up playing with our cousins, or distant
Pretty
cousins.
typical, right?
Yeah.
No, I
A
was
lot of people start.
4 first
Four?
time. 4.
What?
Whoa.
Yeah.
And you remember?
Oh yeah,
Like a
totally.
steel trap.
Yeah. No, I was 4. I played a barbarian and fought a rust monster, and that's why I hate them.
That's why I hate them.
It started early.
It started hell early. But no, my brother, I didn't know what to do. My brother gave me a pencil. He gave me the character sheet. And he was like, okay, roll these dice. This is where you put the numbers, and this
Wow.
is where you put the stuff. And I played it. It was very simple, but then I would play Marvel superheroes with them, and that was
yeah.
like 5, and then, Heroes Unlimited for a long time, and Rifts, and
So
all
you're
that
like
stuff.
Kurt Russell from Soldier, only with RPGs.
Exactly. Well,
I'm going to kill them all. So.
that's the thing. Like, I've been playing games and been running games off and on for 32 years now.
Jeez.
And it's for a long time. I just dated myself. In fact, yesterday I forgot how old I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting there.
No, I really did. I was like, how old am I? And everyone was telling me their birthdays. I was like, oh, I'm a year older now. Shit.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's when I started. I have a somewhat D&D not really question for you, real quickly. Star Wars, Star Trek, or Babylon 5?
Wait, whoa. There's an now.
Yeah,
All right. Your question.
that's my question.
So what's it? Yeah. So it's.
What do you like most?
It would be unfair for me to ask you what you mean. It's my job to take the question
As is.
face value, and I got to say Star Trek.
Okay.
I called it.
I'm glad I
Knew
didn't
it.
bet, but all right.
I mean, I worked on 2 different versions of the Star Trek role-playing game. One of which won the Best New RPG Origins Award.
Whoa.
So I think obviously Star Wars looms huge in my nerd upbringing, but I was never an expanded universe guy. I've literally never, apart from like some bullshit books they wrote in the 70s when no one knew any better, I've never really read any of the ancillary Star Wars stuff. To me, here's the thing. To me, Star Wars is a filmic experience.
Yeah.
Star Wars is part of the church, my church of the theater. It is something, it is when the 20th Century Fox logo comes up and you get that bum, ba-da-da, that to me always meant Star Wars. It was in front of other movies too, but I didn't care. So for me, Star Wars is part of the theater-going cinematic experience. But Star Trek is about storytelling. Right, outside it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me what the medium is. And I know there are people who feel that way about Star Wars, and that's fine. But me personally, like, I think Captain Kirk is one of the great characters in the history of American fiction. Like, I would put him in the top 5 characters of all time. He's iconic for a reason, right? I think that original series has some terrible episodes of television, but I think it's also got some of the best episodes of television. I think it gets taken for granted. I think Star Trek Deep Space Nine is one of the best shows I've seen.
Boom.
Oh.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
I
what
happen to
want.
think Star Trek: The Next Generation is one of the worst things I've ever had to watch.
Oh my God. Thank you.
I'm pretty sure it gives people
You're like
cancer.
John's favorite person now.
It is. It's like C-SPAN in space.
It's pretty bad. But there's a great documentary on Netflix about how that show was put together, and if you want to know what I think about how that it's like, go watch that show. Go watch that Netflix documentary, and you will see they didn't have writers. They had like fans submitting scripts and producers having to write them, and to me, it shows, right? So I hate watching Next Gen. But original series, Deep Space Nine, the original series is one of my favorite shows. That I read a lot of Star Trek books when I was a kid because there wasn't anything else. There were the movies. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is one of my top 3 favorite movies, and sometimes, depending on my mood, is number 1. I unironically love that first Star Trek movie. So to me, Star Trek it's better to game in. The universe of Star Wars exists so that Luke can defeat the Emperor, can blow up the Death Star. Whereas Star Trek, implicit in everything they do is there are lots of starships out there, right? And you could be your own captain, or you could, like, there's all sorts of stuff to tell there. So yeah, to me, Star Trek is more about storytelling, and it doesn't matter to me the medium. Whereas Star Wars is about cinema and film. And
Gotcha.
those things are important to me. But if I had to pick one, I would pick. And then Babylon 5 was this show with really bad special effects and terrible acting.
Oh, I loved it. I love that show so much.
These are not popular opinions. I realize that. But
I love it.
Babylon
It's okay.
5 missed
I love
me.
it.
Like, I had friends of mine who were like, "Dude, your D&D campaign reminds me of Babylon 5," and I'm like, "Well, that's fantastic." But it's not. I couldn't get it for whatever reason. I couldn't get over the hump on that show. So I'm sure it's one of those things. Like, I felt the same way about Deep Space Nine originally. I'm sure if I had tuned into Bab 5 like in the middle, I probably would have gotten hooked. But trying to watch it from the beginning,
Yeah, you messed up. Third season.
It's interesting because as a long time now former hardcore Star Wars
long
guy.
time now, former.
Yeah, no, I was about as hardcore as it gets, and then I worked at Lucas, and then that changed. But anyways, moving on. But I was always a little jealous of Star Trek fans in the sheer amount of official content they were delivered. Because with Star Wars, you had these movies, and then it was this massive drought until the prequels, and there was expanded universe.
There were novels and then some comics, yeah.
Yeah, but it was, all the expanded universe,
That's the
as
thing, like,
voraciously as you could devour it, there was still that, it's not really Star Wars. So
Right, like when Star Wars was 3 movies and a couple of books, Star Trek was 76 hours of television.
yeah.
And that was just the original series, right? So the amount of kind of high-level content, really well-produced television. Like, whatever I might think of Next Gen, they spent a lot of money on that show, right? It had a great cast. So, yeah, like that's, I get that, yeah.
Yeah, it's all
hard for
official stuff that you can work with, whereas, if you want to make an adventure in Star Wars, and you can totally do it with Expanded Universe, but especially with all the retconning, that's a whole nother thing, but you always had that sneaking suspicion, like, I don't remember this in the movies. Does this feel like Star Wars?
Yeah, and there's a lot of nonsense that George Lucas, like a lot of, like you start reading some of the names that dude came up with for dudes in the background.
Oh, yeah, we know.
Are you
We
kidding
know.
me with this? This guy he's.
Oh, someone do the fast version of the story of those names.
That's James. That's all James.
James, tell the story.
Well, this was in I can't remember what magazine the article was in, but this was when I believe they were pitching Force Unleashed 2. The main character, the protagonist, had up until then been referred to as Star Killer. That was his kind of call sign.
Sure.
And
yeah. It's a historic name in Star Wars. I get it.
And they wanted to say, okay, well, now he's Darth Vader's apprentice, so he's going to give him a Darth name. So let's bounce this off George and see what he comes up with. And I believe the two recommendations were Darth Icky or Darth Insanius.
Yep.
And without having been there
Darth
and just
Icky.
hearing this from someone who was in the room, it was, it could have been something, maybe something like Darth Icky, but that was not the impression I got. So,
like if you want to know where George gets a lot of that nonsense, you got to go watch the original Flash Gordon serials.
Yeah,
like
easy.
the Buster Crabbe stuff from like 1935, right? This is like before World War II, and that's the stuff Lucas grew up with.
Yeah.
And the older he gets, there's a great interview we did on the Charlie Rose show. You might be able to watch it online. It's from the 90s when Charlie Rose is just talking to him about Star Wars, and he said he was an apprentice of Francis Ford Coppola, who will be remembered 1,000 years from now as a brilliant fucking filmmaker. And he said he had this movie he wanted to do, and he didn't know if he was going to have to direct it or not. And Coppola's like, dude, you're not a fucking storyteller, you're an editor. Right? He's like, but this is my story. I don't trust anybody else to do it. And this is Lucas describing this. He's like, Coppola took me to one of the cabanas out on American Zoetrope. They had their own studio they were trying to build from scratch, like a real studio. So they went into one of the like freestanding, mobile homes there. And he said he spent a month kind of pouring everything he knew about storytelling into my head. And then I went and wrote the script. And it's clear to, I think, everybody who knows that dude, that every year that has gone by since that meeting with Coppola, he has forgotten more.
Yeah.
Right? And his capacities as a storyteller have kind of disintegrated.
And
So,
also,
like-
you can only be so extremely ungodly wealthy for so long before you start to become detached from the everyman, which is what I feel like played such a huge role in the originals.
Correct. I mean, he had kids. He adopted kids, and that, and his producer, the guy who told him no, left, and that's why Return of the Jedi is such a kind of like, that's not a very good movie. We have a lot of affection for it because it has so much inertia and we love the characters. But like on the page, Return of the Jedi is like where everything kind of started to go wrong. And that was right. He lost his right-hand man because the guy's like, I don't want to make toys. I want to tell stories. And so did you once, right? And that dude has come out of the woodwork in the past couple of years and given lots of interviews talking about his time on Star Wars and what a huge difference, like how different it was 76, 77 through like 80, and then how everything changed. And he's like, he got a divorce, he adopted kids, and suddenly he wanted to make amusement park rides.
I have a quick anecdote that actually ties George Lucas's names with role-playing games.
Oh, no.
I remember you had, I'm pointing at James, the D6 Star Wars role-playing game.
The West End
End
games.
games.
Yeah, it was the Mos Eisley. I think I know what you're
Yeah.
referring to. The Mos Eisley Starport
Yeah.
source book.
And in it, there was a character. It looked like a little mole rat guy. I'm trying to remember the picture.
They're like
of-
squirrel people. I
Yeah.
forget the name of the race.
And his name, we should almost put a Twitter thing, see if anybody can guess the name, but it was, the name of this guy was Qui-Gon Jinn.
No, it was Mace Windu.
Oh, no, it was Mace Windu.
And
My
he was-
apologies,
Mace Windu
yeah.
is a name that dude has been trying to trot out for a long time. It's come up before.
Yeah.
It's in like very early versions of, I think, the first Star Wars script. There was a character named Mace Windu.
Yeah, and in that book, he sold bantha ribs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, George Lucas fundamentally believed in the kind of the older that dude gets, the less interested he is in tempering his interest in the goofy Flash Gordon serials. Like in the 70s, that was part of the mix along with Japanese film that was huge among the USC crowd that he was one of because he lived in LA and they were at a time in the 60s when no one in America could watch Kurosawa. They had Kurosawa festivals all the time. And so all that samurai stuff was being fed in. He was a big fan of the World War II movies like the Dam Busters. He read Lensman, like Jedi are basically just Lensman. And he's like, we're going to rip all this stuff off. But I think the older he gets, I think this is true of a lot of people, the older they get, the more they look back to their childhood. And when he was a kid, he liked those Flash Gordon serials. So as a result, Star Wars got sillier and sillier until J.J. Abrams took over. And what's the first line of dialogue in The Force Awakens? Anybody remember?
It's something about there's like war or there's like battle. Oh no.
know.
I know. It's in peril or it's
He says the first line of spoken dialogue in The Force Awakens comes
Oh,
from
spoken.
Poe Dameron.
I'm thinking of the quote.
You're thinking
I
of
was
the
not
crawl.
sober.
The first
Yeah,
line of
yeah, yeah.
spoken dialogue is by Poe Dameron, and he says, "This is going to go a long way toward making things right."
Oh no!
Right?
awesome.
That is not Poe Dameron talking to Ming the Merciless. I don't remember the name of the actor, the guy that played the guy he's talking to. That is J.J. Abrams and the screenwriter talking to you.
Is that Max von
Yeah.
Sydow?
Max von
Max
Sydow.
von
Yeah, that's
Sydow.
the scene is between
One
Poe
of my
Dameron
favorites.
and Max von Sydow. But that's the screenwriter. It's very similar, by the way, to the opening line of the 1979 Richard Donner Superman. The very first spoken line of dialogue is Marlon Brando on Krypton in a Superman movie saying, "This is no fantasy, no careless product of a wild imagination." Right? And it sounds like he's telling you, the viewer, this is not fiction, it's real. Right? So I think that sometimes listen to that first line of dialogue in a movie, and it's often important. And
Yeah, I'm gonna
J.J.
catch it
Abrams
now.
knew he was trying to unfuck. I was telling people, I started to believe, right? I think we all kind of started to believe once the Force Awakens stuff started to come out, and I was like, you know what? Not only am I not worried that J.J. Abrams can do it, I kind of think you need to be George Lucas to fuck it up.
Yeah.
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 Like
I mean-
you could give Star Wars to lots of directors, and they would knock it out of the park and make stuff that blew our minds. You
Sure.
kind of have to be George Lucas to fuck it up.
Yeah, it was funny when Lucas got acquired by Disney. There's so many people crying that the sky is falling, and
Look,
I was so stoked. I was like, this is going to be
Yeah.
fantastic.
Well, look
because-
what they did with the Muppets. They love the Muppets. Look what they did with Marvel. They love Marvel. When they buy stuff, it's because they get it, right? They know what people like. They just want to give people what they like.
Yep.
Sure. Well,
Anyway.
I'm gonna forego my question for one last question for you, Matt, and I'm gonna give
answer
it
is yes,
to
I am
Alex the
ready.
Troglodyte.
Whoa. Well, he sounds like a stand-up guy. So
Yeah, and he asks, "What's your favorite part about being a DM?"
I think I have an answer. My favorite part about being a DM is when the players come up with crazy shit that I never would have thought of, and they did it in desperation. Right? They're like, our backs are to the wall. We're all going to die. What does that item do again? And you're like, it does this kind of useless thing. And they're like, no, there's got to be, I got an idea. Right? And they bust out some crazy shit that I never would have thought of, that I know no one has ever thought of. Right?
The
It's like,
unexpected.
you know in that moment, no one's ever done this before. You guys just invented this cool thing. And that, to me, is where the juice is. That's the best part of DMing, is watching. It's my job to chase the players up a tree. It's their job to figure out how to get down. And
Sure.
sometimes they get really, really inventive, and that's amazing.
That's a great answer. I love that.
Yeah, works for me.
That's my favorite. That's some of my
Tells
favorite
you a lot
moments
about my
too.
DMing style. Like, I think if you asked Matt Mercer, it would be, the answers would focus on character and drama and tension, and that's great. I would love to play in his game, and I've run games like that. But me as a DM, I like it when the players are inventive and they're almost using Dungeons and Dragons like a language, right? Like, we all speak English, and almost every sentence we're speaking in any given moment, that's probably the first time that sentence has ever been spoken in the history of the human species, right? We are using this tool to invent stuff on the fly dynamically, and when the players start doing that in D&D and they come up with like we're in the middle of an ice cave and we have a stone of summoning earth elementals. Let's find some stone. Let's find a rock, right? And they're like, I'm like, this is a good idea. Like, I hadn't thought of that. That's crazy. So yeah, that's the thing that I love.
It's awesome. Well, I think that's it for tonight. I mean, we've gone on quite a while, and I could
Yeah.
probably sit here and
Catch you
keep
up,
talking to Matt with you guys.
Yeah, I'm having a
for a
blast.
long time, but.
Hey, I really enjoyed being on. I think you guys are fantastic.
Well, and we would love to have you on again, by the way, sometime. So I've really enjoyed talking with you. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on. It's
I
been
had a
Very
great
great.
time, guys.
educational.
I love your show. I think it's fantastic.
Thank
And
you.
if
I thought
you
you guys asked a bunch of great questions. It was a great discussion.
if you ever find yourself in Northern California, feel free to hit us up because we would love to roll
I
some
will do
dice.
so. I have relatives up there. You never know.
Awesome.
Oh,
Oh,
sweet.
excellent.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're in the Bay Area, so. All right,
Fantastic.
let me say goodnight to everyone, all our listeners. Thank you so much for joining in, and thank you again, Matt, for coming on. James, Brett, John, thank you for being here tonight. Make sure to check us out on Twitter
And our
at
asses.
Orc-Chop Express, and make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. And also make sure, if you haven't, so I don't know who of our listeners wouldn't already have, but subscribe to Matt's channel as well. You can what is it?
Just search
YouTube.com/Matt Colville.
I think so. Yeah, just search
Colville,
for Matt Colville,
okay.
Colville. I think Google knows who I am now. People search for me.
Yeah, and there will
if
be
you
a
search for me,
link.
Google will
There
find
will be a link. So and then make sure to check out our website, the orcchopexpress.com. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here and joining us. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye,
Later.
Matt.
Bye.
Bye.